Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Deku reborn as Doomslayer in hell and created army of demon wives? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Wake, strike, decide. The chain whips at Deku's face the second he blinks awake. He doesn't think. His hand is already up, catching iron mid-snap. The links bite his palm. He yanks once, hard. AHOR. Ned Brute stumbles off balance and gets a knuckle sandwich in return. Bone cracks. The Brute sleeps. Noise slams in from every direction. Boots on metal, a crowd baying for blood, a siren that sounds like an engine swallowing itself. Deku lands on gritty stone, knees bent, eyes up. A dirt ring arena, 4 gates, 20 fighters and a single rule: don't be the slowest corpse. He tastes copper, realizes it's someone else's blood, and moves. A blade flashes in his peripheral. He backsteps, lets it pass, hooks the attacker's wrist, and flips them over his shoulder. Momentum does most of the work. The fighter eats floor. Deku doesn't chase. He's already scanning, counting weapons, measuring distances, noting the broken turrets in the corners and the lock tower spiking above them like a jagged tooth. No narration inside his head. Just clicks. Choices. A woman in ragged crimson armor stalks toward him through the chaos, curved blade held low, eyes crystal bright and so calm it's almost bored. Her stance says duel. Her boot scuffs say she's already mapped angles. Her jaw says don't waste my time. She tests him with a lazy slash. He parries with the chain he's still holding, twists, and drives a shoulder into her center mass. The hit would floor most people. It rocks her half a step. She grins. You were asleep 5 seconds ago, she says. You're either a dead man sprinting or the problem I've been waiting for. Call me Deku, he says, and ducks a spear from behind. The spearhead dents his left pauldron and throws sparks. The suit holds. He grinds an elbow into the spear guy's ribs, pulls the weapon away, and snaps the shaft against his knee. Crimson armor woman's grin widens. I'm Rivana. Her sword flicks to the side, flicks again. 2 different fighters drop like marionettes with cut strings. We'll see if you keep the name. Above them, a voice booms, oily and pleased. Welcome, Carrion and champions. The pit demands performance. A gate booms open. The pit W. Arden stomps out in a coat of chains and spikes, a slab of muscle and malice, dragging a hook like he wants to hang the world off it. Graggule. Even the crowd hushes a little at that. Rivana's should. R bumps Deku's in a way that isn't an accident. He'll go for the nearest threat first. Congratulations. After that entrance, it's you. Yeah, I figured, Deku says. He swings the broken spear shaft in a lazy circle and clocks how it balances in his hand. Not great. Better than nothing. Graggule's gaze slides over the ring, lands on them, stays. He points. You. New meat. Knees. Hands behind your head. Deku throws the spear shaft like a javelin. It nails the lock tower's exposed alarm bell instead, shattering the rusted thing into squealing metal and silence. The crowd laughs in surprise, then roars louder than before. I don't kneel, Deku says, and the line isn't a speech. It's a shrug with edges. Graggule snorts. Then you break. A dozen chain gangers surge with him, hooks whistling. Deku doesn't wait to be surrounded. He sprints, slides under the first hook, kicks the back of a knee with enough force to fold it the wrong direction, and comes up inside another attacker's reach. Rivana spins into their flank, sword painting crisp lines that end fights in exactly one motion. They don't talk. They don't have to. She knows where he'll be. He trusts her to cover the lane he leaves behind. A heavy net drops from above, weights tinging off stone. Deku rips the net down with a jerk of his gauntlet, wraps it around the chain ganger who threw it, and hurls him into his friends. Comical pile. Effective. Rivana taps her sword against his shoulder, warning, not scold. Your left, she says, and vanishes from his right at the same time, which saves them both. A hook whistles through where her head was. Deku catches the chain around his forearm, lets the hook slide past, then shortens the distance in one jerk while stepping inside the attacker's arc. An uppercut takes teeth. The chain comes free. New weapon. Lock tower, Deku says between exhales. Get me 10 seconds. 7, Rivana says, like he's being greedy, and bolts. Gragil slams his hook into the ground and drags, sending a wave of broken stone rolling toward Deku. The floor itself tries to trip him. Deku hops, hits the crest like a board, and rides it forward, using the momentum to close distance faster than Gragil expects. He plants both feet on the warden's breastplate for a heartbeat and uses him as a launchpad. Gragil's swing misses by a hair and carves a trench. Deku's in the air, twisting, chain whipping, aiming for the tower's ladder. He hits it hard enough to jar his teeth, climbs 2 rungs at a time, and shoulders into the first guard who pokes his head over the rail. The guard falls the long way. Deku reaches the top and finds a panel made for stabbing. He doesn't have a sword. He has fists and stubbornness. So he rips the panel off with a snarl and looks inside. Simple. Even in hell, cheap wiring is cheap wiring. He rips 3 cables and crosses 2. The cages around the pit drop open with the sigh of dying machinery. Shock floods the crowd. The sound that follows isn't a cheer. It's a dozen humans, demons, and in-betweens simultaneously realizing their doors are actually open. It's the kind of sound that changes who you are. Down below, Rivana laughs once, razor bright, and kicks a chain ganger directly into Gragil's knees. Deku turns to jump, sees the turret control. He glances at the crowd, rows of faces expecting slaughter, and flicks the turret away from flesh and toward steel. It coughs bullets into the arena walls, cutting off the chain ganger's retreat lines without turning bodies into paste. He doesn't want a massacre. He wants a corridor. He gets one. He drops, hits the ground in a tuck, rolls back to his feet and gets exactly what he expected, Gragil charging like a train. Deku meets him halfway, slides to the side at the last second, and wraps the chain around the warden's forearm. Every link bites. Gragil yanks. Deku lets the momentum carry, circles behind, and kicks the back of Gragil's other knee. The giant laughs because it doesn't hurt enough to be real pain. Cute, Gragil says, and smashes a fist into the side of Deku's helmet. Stars burst. The Praetor plates whine but hold. Deku staggers, vision doubling, and forces the world back into one picture by will alone. He can't win in a slugfest. Fine, he doesn't need to. Rivana, he calls, and throws the chain up. She understands in a blink. She leaps, grabs the chain, vaults, and plants both boots on Gragil's helmet while using Deku's tension to yank the warden's arm high. Gragil's balance tilts, finally. Deku drives his shoulder into Gragil's hip and keeps pushing, legs pumping. Everything he is turning into forward motion. They topple. The ground shakes. Deku doesn't aim for the kill. He jams the chain under Gragil's gauntlet and threads it through a ring on his chest harness. The more Gragil struggles, the tighter his own armor locks. The trap closes like a joke that's a little too mean. Rivana lands and puts her blade at Gragil's throat. The crowd leans in as one. Say something impressive, she murmurs. Nah, Deku says. He looks up at the stands, at the gamblers who wanted a spectacle and the hungry who wanted a miracle, at the fighters who watch. Their cages open and still can't make themselves move. He opens his hands, palms out. Gates open, he says to everyone, voice amplified by the arena's echo. Walk free, or walk with me, your choice. One of the freed fighters takes a step, stops, glances at the guards still holding their weapons. Deku kicks a fallen hook into the dust like it's nothing and stares down the guards without blinking. Anyone touches a refugee, he says, we'll have a conversation you won't enjoy. He holds that stare until the first guard looks away. That one small surrender ripples. The others follow. A thin, desperate-looking demon girl with soot on her face moves first. She limps toward the gap in the wall and doesn't get stabbed for it. That's all it takes. The trickle becomes a stream. Rivana eps her sword at Gragil's throat for the full messy minute it takes, in case anyone grows a conscience too late. Up on a crystalline balcony that wasn't there a second ago, a tall figure watches with arms folded and jaw tight. Metallic wings folded like knives. Eyes like hard math. The air around him hums with choral harmonics that don't match any rhythm in the pit. He speaks to no one and to an army at once. Anomalous mercy. Seraphil Astra says, not pleased, not angry, just exact. Record. Reassess. The crystal blinks out. Back on the sand, Gragil finds a laugh, even chained. You think you changed anything? This place chews hope like gristle. Deku crouches beside him, helmet faceplate retracted so Gragil can see the expression. Calm, unmoved. I didn't change the pit, he says. I changed what walks out of it. He looks to Rivana. You done testing me? She weighs him with that careful, blade-thin gaze, then flips her sword and drives it point first into the ground beside Gragil's head. It sinks inches deep and stops humming. I'm bored of bad kings, she says. And I like the way you pick your fights. She yanks her sword free and gestures toward a sally port tucked under the stands. There's a back way. The warden's barracks. Keys. Gear. Paperwork you can choke a dragon with. Lead, Deku says. They move. The barracks stink of oil, old blood, and cheap triumph. Deku peels a chain hood off a rack, weighs it, tosses it again. Rivana pulls a bundle of seals from a desk and shakes her head. This ledger alone could keep a court busy for a month, she says. Gragil sold prisoners into arenas he technically didn't own, skimmed the tithe, oh. She flicks a page with her thumb. He also owes 3 lords favors. The kind that never die. Good, Deku says. Let's spend their favors on the people they hurt. You don't bargain with these lords, you gut them. I do both. Rivana considers him like he's a weapon you pick up by the wrong end. UPLA. To walk into the conclave with this ledger and a smile. Something like that. He glances at the wall map, all red string and arrogant handwriting. The 7 courts are marked with little crowns. A few are circled with a greasy thumbprint. But first, we get everyone out. Rivana slides the ledger into a satchel and tosses it to him. He catches it one-handed. You're not wrong, she says, you're just early. He grins. Story of my life. Footsteps clatter in the hall, uneven, frightened, determined. The first wave of freed fighters and civilians flood the barracks, eyes wide, backs hun. Shed like they expect the air itself to clamp back down. Deku steps aside, makes space, points them to water and bandages, sets a rhythm with quick orders. You, wrap his shoulder. You, take the knife. Off your belt before you stab yourself by accident. Hey, big guy, you look like you can lift. Start prying those bolts off that doorframe. Easy wins first. No speeches. Tasks. It snowballs. A demon. Mother with 2 kids clinging to her tail watches him for a long beat. You're not like the slaughterers, she says. You don't smile when someone bleeds. I don't smile when they cry, either, he says. You hungry? She nods once. Distrust welded to the motion. Deku digs into a supply crate, tosses her a ration bar like it's the finest thing in the world. He keeps moving before she can say thank you. She eats anyway. Her kids relax a fraction. The fraction matters. Rivana reappears with a crate full of little metal rectangles, packed seals. He kept emergency brands, she says. Sign your life over and survive the day. Classic. Quote. Burn them, Deku says. We won't use handcuffs disguised as contracts. Rivana raises an eyebrow. And when people run after we help them, then they run as free people. She studies him again, slower now. Not a test, an inventory. You are going to make the courts furious. Then they can get in line. A metallic cough stutters from above, the turret trying to find targets. Deku's helm drops over his face with a blink. Rivana lifts her sword without looking. He taps his wrist to the wall panel he ripped earlier, reroutes power to the doors, The fortress wakes up under his fingers like it recognizes a new owner. The pit warden groans behind them. He must have wriggled free of some chain. He staggers into the doorway, blood matting his beard, hatred steady as gravity. Rivana shifts to intercept. Deku holds a hand up. No, he says. Me. Gragil charges because that's his whole vocabulary. Deku meets him, slips past the first haymaker, palms the second away. Stomps the arch of Gragil's foot and, in the same motion, brings his forehead down into Gragil's nose with a crack that echoes in the frame. Gragil reels, roaring, and goes for the hook that isn't in his hand anymore. Deku is already inside his guard. He locks his arms, drops his weight, and lifts. It's ugly. It works. Gragil hits the floor on his back with a breath. Stealing thud that steals the room's air, too. Deku plants a knee on his chest, calm as a stone. Last chance, he says. Walk away. Live quietly. Don't touch the people who just got free. Gragul spits blood into Deku's faceplate. You don't own me. Yeah, Deku says, wiping the smear away without looking. That's the point. He stands, steps back, and lets the warden choose his ending. Gragul tries to surge. Rivena's blade hisses once. She doesn't cut his head off. She slices his chain harness down the middle. Metal clatters to the floor, useless. You're done, she tells him, voice low. Crawl away before he changes his mind. Gragul crawls. Pride keeps his spine straight until the doorway. After that, he drags himself like every other beaten thing in hell. The barracks breathes again. Okay, Deku says to the room, dialing his voice to clear and steady. Here's how this goes. If you want out, you leave now through the south tunnel. We'll keep it clear. If you want to fight with me, you stay and grab a kit. No brands, no chains. You get a job and a name. We don't burn houses or take hostages. We don't hurt kids. We hit hard and we help fast, and when we screw up, we fix it. A murmur runs through the crowd, confusion and hope colliding like two strong drinks. A last row fighter with more scars than teeth raises a hand halfway. And if the lords come for us, they will, Deku says. So we make them come to a better house. A few laugh. It's not a funny line. It's permission to imagine something else. Rivena leans on the doorframe, watching the recruits self-select. She keeps count without counting. You just turned an arena into a foyer, she says, amused. Bold. It's ugly, Deku says, glancing at the blood-streaked walls. But it's ours. He spends the next hour doing the thing nobody sings about, logistics. He rummages for maps, marks safe routes with chalk, tells 3 kids where to find a water pump, lifts a collapsed beam so a teenager can yank his foot free, resets a shoulder. Cuts 100 little knots that have tied this place to pain. He's not performing. He's establishing standards. The room starts mirroring him in small ways, sweeping, passing bandages. Catching each other when they stagger. Not a miracle, a habit. At some point, a messenger sprint stumbles in with eyes like broken glass. Conclave guard, he gasps. 2 streets. They heard. Rivena pushes off the frame, all business. How many? 2 squads. Shields and pikes. A caster. Deku rolls his shoulders, checks the charge on his favorite gauntlet, and nods once to himself. We don't have walls worth the word, he says. Okay. We build a corridor instead. Evac on the south tunnel in waves. Fighters with me flank and break the spear wall. Rivena, you Ancho, are the line between those debris mounds, make it a funnel. Anyone who can't swing a blade gets refugees moving. He starts toward the door, then pauses and looks back at the crowd because he wants them to hear this part. We don't aim for bodies we don't have to. We aim for hands, ankles, gear. Drop shields, we step past. I'm not here to trade corpses with idiots who never get their hands dirty. I'm here to get you home. Rivena snorts. You really think there's a home around here? There is if we build it. He jogs into a street that used to belong to fear. The air tastes like rust and ash. The conclave guard rolls in with textbook formation, shield wall tight, pikes leveled, caster chanting in a drone that tries to turn courage into sand. Deku moves before the chant finishes. He dashes dead center, then breaks left at a humanly impossible angle, his boots finding footholds where there aren't any. The pikes stab where he was. He knocks 2 aside with his forearm, grabs a 3rd by the shaft, and yanks a soldier forward into his own shield. The front rank stutters. Rivena's crew hits the right flank like scissors cutting cloth. No screaming, just good footwork, precise strikes. And the confidence that comes from having a job and doing it well. Someone tries to go high with a spear to pin her. She cuts the spearhead off and pokes him in the chest with the useless stick, more insult than harm. He panics and falls. Someone else refuses to panic and gets a boot in the face for his discipline. The caster lifts a hand flaming white and traces a circle that eats light. Deku throws his chain. It wraps the caster's wrist. He yanks, hard. The spell fizzles with a whine and a pop like someone slamming a door on a song. The caster rises, surprised, and meets Deku's forehead. He sleeps. Shields down. Deku shouts, and drops into a low slide that takes 2 ankles out, then a spin that puts his heel into a 3rd knee. Shields tilt. The cracks appear. Refugees pour through the gap behind him in staggered waves, clutching satchels and each other. He doesn't kill. He doesn't need to. He breaks the machine instead. 2 minutes later, the street is theirs. The guard limps away with bruised egos and broken grips. Rivana wipes dust off her blade with the unconscious sheath of a confiscated banner. A boy who can't be old enough for this tugs Deku's gauntlet. Why didn't you finish them? Because I need them to go home and tell the truth, Deku says. We didn't slaughter them. We beat them and let them go. That's a story that pulls more people to our side than a pile of bodies. The boy nods like he's storing the thought for later. He probably is. Rivana plants her boots beside Deku's, chin up, eyes raking the rooftops for the next problem. You keep doing that, she says. And the conclave will either invite you to tea or put your head on a spike. We'll see which one tastes worse. A flicker of crystal at the edge of sight, there and gone. Seraphil again, or one of his mirrors. Sweeping the board with invisible fingers. Deku doesn't look toward it. He acts like the only important thing is the next person he can help. Sometimes it's a lie. Today it's true. They spend the afternoon in motion. Street to street, door to door. Evacuate, stabilize, move. Deku keeps the pace brisk and the orders simple. The coalition he didn't have this morning's charts looking suspiciously like one by evening. Rivana's fighters in red sashes, a handful of ex-gladiators carrying crates with ridiculous care, 2 kids running a water line like they invented plumbing. As the sky bleeds into a color hell calls, twilight, because someone once wrote the word down and the land refuses to forget, Deku and Rivana return to the arena. It's quieter now. The crowds have either fled or stayed home. Gragul is gone, probably nursing his pride with cheap rage. Deku hops onto the smashed lock tower, takes a breath, and projects. I'm Deku, he says, because names matter. Today we broke this pit. Tomorrow we walk into the conclave and make them say why the pits exist. Murmurs. That word, make, has weight here, the kind that makes powerful people twitch. If you want out, he adds. Nobody will stop you. If you want to fight for something worth the bruises, I'm building it. One rule. We don't become what we hate. He points at the ground. This place. He shakes his head. Not a home. A scar. We won't live in it. We'll live past it. Rivana steps onto the tower with him and sets her hand on his shoulder in a gesture that's half public vow, half silent dare to anyone who wants to try them. I'll test him tomorrow, she says to the crowd, dry. I'll probably test him every day. That's my job. Until he fails, I'm with him. A laugh runs through the group like a gentler version of the earlier roar. Someone starts cleaning the seats. Someone else tears down a betting sign and uses it to patch a hole in the wall. Little choices. Big echoes. Deku ho. LDS Rivana's gaze for a half second and nods, not ceremonial, just honest. Good, he says. I'd be worried if you didn't. The refugees begin to bed down in the corners that don't smell like poison. Fighters rotate watch without being told. The world doesn't change in a day. But the crooked line of it bends a little. He steps off the tower and almost trips over a kid sleeping in a cloak too big for him. Deku tucks the cloak tighter with 2 fingers, glances at Rivana, and jerks his chin toward the south tunnel. We'll walk the line, he says. Obviously, she says. They pace the perimeter in companionable quiet, only stopping once when a pain spike flares in his ribs where Gragul's hook nearly got lucky. Rivana catches the flinch and says nothing. After a minute, she does say something. You never asked why I was in the cage. You would have told me if you wanted me to know, he says. You still might. Her mouth twists. I took a job I thought would help. It didn't. It got people hurt. Then help now, he says. Like he's handing her a tool he uses every day. We're short on perfect. We've got plenty of chances. She snorts, a short, almost involuntary sound. It might be the closest she gets to a laugh when she doesn't have a sword in her hand. That ledger. Conclave will kill to get it back. Literally. They can try, Deku says, and smiles like a man who knows exactly what he can do with a wall. A map, and 2 stubborn friends. He returns to the center of the arena, looks up at the skyless sky. No prayers. No promises he can't keep. Just a line he draws and then stands on. Gates open, he says again, softer, to himself this time. He's not talking about the iron doors anymore. Behind him, a dozen fires crackle. People talk about nothing important on purpose. Rivana sits on a crate, sword across her knees, shoulders finally not braced for a hit that never came. Deku rolls his neck once and starts planning tomorrow. Conclave, the ledger, the energy tithes, the faces he wants in the room when the bad habits get challenged. None of it is clean. Good, he's better in the mess. He checks the last watch, swaps a tired fighter for a fresh pair of eyes, and takes a slow lap that sees more than it shows. When he finally lets himself lie down on a patch of ground that isn't screaming, he closes his eyes and can still hear the thing that matters most. Saint from earlier, the sound a cage makes in a soul when it opens. He'll take that noise over cheers any day. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. The Conclave Gambit. Morning comes the way it always does here. No sky, just a paler kind of dark. The arena still smells like dust and adrenaline. Deku's already moving. He checks the watch rotations, hands a kid a better knife with a quick tip on how to hold it without losing fingers, and shoulder bumps Rivana as she finishes sharpening her sword on a whetstone the size of a book. You still plan to walk into the conclave like you own a chair? She asks, amused more than skeptical. I don't need a chair, he says. Just a floor. Cute answer, she says, slides the blade home. Try not to die in a speech. He grins. I don't do speeches. The ledger rides in his satchel like a loaded trap. Pages of deals and debt, signatures that stink of blood. The kind of book that gets couriers murdered and kings careful. He cinches the strap, nods to the fig HTERS who volunteered to come as witnesses, and sets off. The route to the 7 courts runs through streets that flinch by habit. Refugees watch from doorways, half wanting to cheer, half expecting curtains to bite down like teeth. Deku keeps his pace steady. He meets eyes. He doesn't wave. It's not a parade. It's proof of concept. By the time they hit the court approach, a long corridor between pillars cut from black stone and old pride, the little group has stretched to double. 2 ex-gladiators with bandaged ribs. A demon matriarch with ink-stained hands. A boy carrying a flag he tore off. A rack and turned upside down on purpose. People who decided last night that maybe they're allowed to change the rules and woke up still believing it. The conclave hall squats at the end of the apro. ACH like an old beast with too many tusks. No doors, just an archway that hums with warding sigils. Guards wait beneath it. Shield wall perfect, pikes slanted, scowls rehearsed. The captain's helm hides most of his face. What shows looks tired and mean. Petitioners use the side forum, he says, already bored. Not a petitioner, Deku says. He tilts his head at the arch. Open. Not how this works. Then change how it works. A heartbeat of standoff. Rivana's fingers drum on her scabbard in a rhythm that would make most people back up 4 steps. The captain holds because his job says he has to. And because he can tell they won't swing first. Deku points to the archway. You have 2 choices. Hold this line for lords who sell kids to pits, or let us in so I can force them to argue in daylight. The captain's jaw tightens. The guards don't move, but their shoulders remember weight. Rivana sighs, steps past Deku, and taps the captain's shield with her knuckle like an impatient teacher. Trial by deed, she says. Ancient right. We trigger it, your wall stands aside, the hall watches. If he fails, you can kick his teeth in. If he wins, you don't have to clean up after your bosses later. The captain blinks. He didn't expect anyone to remember that clause. He looks at Deku. Deku just looks back. Trial by deed. Then, the captain says, and snaps his fingers. The shield line parts. He jerks his chin at a side corridor. You get 1 run. No casualties in the hall. No spells that roast the ceiling. Don't embarrass me. Feelings mutual, Deku says. The corridor they step into is long and narrow, with murder holes chewed into the high walls. The conclave calls this a security channel. Rivana calls it the throat. Deku calls it a place that begs to be exploited. 4 conclave bravos step out of shadow with polished blades and smiles that say they like pain more than money. 2 ladder archers above, a third squad behind a gate at the far end, helmets dipping as they sync their breathing. Sleek, expensive, predictable. A bell chimes. The trial starts. Deku doesn't wait for a cue. He plants a boot on the wall and runs 2 steps up, jumps sideways, grabs a sconce, and swings across an arrow slit as the first bolt cracks past his ribs. He drops into a slide, sweeps the legs of the closest Bravo, and pops to his feet in the same motion. Rivana meets the second with a feint that turns into a pommel smash at the last second. The Bravo whiffs at air that's already empty. She hums like she's finally awake. Arrows flit. Deku snags one mid-flight with 2 fingers, sticks it into the seam of the gate gear, and yanks. The gate stutters. The timing on the far squad's entrance goes sloppy. Above, an archer tries to adjust. Rivana flips a dagger end over end. It doesn't pierce his armor. It pins his sleeve to the wall. He swears. The second archer leans to help and slams his face into a crossbeam he forgot was there. He goes glassy and slumps. Silent. Fast. No gore. They move like water through a clogged pipe. Halfway down, a fresh set of guards drops caltrops the size of baby dragon teeth. Deku doesn't slow. He kicks a discarded shield forward, surfs it like a kid with a death wish, and lets the caltrops tick against the metal while 3 Bravos swing for his head. He lies back on the moving shield, feels the blade wind kiss his nose, and jabs upward. 1 Bravo loses his grip and his dignity together. The shield slides to a stop. Deku rolls off with a little flourish he doesn't mean to do, but the crowd up in the viewing gallery catches it and laughs. Sound bleeds into the corridor. Betting, whispers, a lord very annoyed to be entertained without permission. They reach the inner gate intact. The captain jogs alongside in a service tunnel, keeping pace with them through the slits. He doesn't look as bored. So far so good, he mutters. Don't stab a magistrate. No promises, Rivana says. Maybe just the robe. The inner gate lifts with leisurely malice. Like a yawn. Beyond it sprawls the conclave hall. Tiered seating carved from obsidian, banners hanging like threats, a floor inlaid with a map of the courts. 9 thrones, most occupied. The center dais holds an old stone lectern and a coil of chain used for swearing oaths with the kind of flair that makes poor people roll their eyes. Scribes line the sides, quills sharp. Expressions set to, I don't get paid enough. Deku steps onto the map. He drops the ledger onto the lectern. The sound is very small and very loud at the same time. I'm Deku, he says. We going to talk about these signatures. The conclave reacts in layers. A bored-looking lord in lacquered horns checks his nails. A woman with 4 eyes and a mouth like a razor clicks her tongue. A judge whose robes do more speaking than his face leans forward. At the far left, a young woman in ember-red scholar leathers stands very still with a finger marking a page in her notebook. She doesn't talk yet. She watches how he breathes, how he sets his feet. She's taking him apart and filing the pieces in a neat library inside her skull. Rivana leans against a pillar like she owns it. The guards spread out along the edges, trying to look like part of the architecture. The crowd in the high gallery leans to see if this will be a disaster or a day worth remembering. A gavel cracks. Magistrix Ul, keeper of procedures and favorite of none, squints at Deku like he's a stain on paper. Unrecognized parties speak only by permission. Trial by deed gives me the floor, Deku says. Unleas. You want to argue with your captain for honoring an ancient right in front of your clients. Subtle smile from the captain in the tunnel. Ul makes a show of considering a choice she's already lost. She waves a hand like shooing a fly. You have the floor until you bore me. Deku flips the ledger open to a page marked with dried blood. He taps 3 names, says them out loud. The room does a small, collective flinch at one of them. He doesn't add adjectives. He doesn't sell. He just lays the page flat and slides it to the nearest scribe. Gragul's ledger, he says. Arena sales, false contracts, kid tithes disguised as tax. The signatures that approve the transfers match signatures on your donation rolls. I want the pits closed. I want a restitution tithe pulled from the pockets that signed this. Not from the bellies that bled for it. A lord with a gold jaw laughs like dropping cutlery. And if we don't feel like being milked by an upstart and his pet duchess. Rivana doesn't move. Her gaze does something surgical to him for free. Deku doesn't look at the gold jaw. He points at the gallery. We closed one pit and kept a city from burning down doing it, he says. We can close more. Or we can keep closing them and let the people remember who screamed while we did the right thing. The young woman in ember leathers finally speaks. Her voice slides clear, quick, and like she learned to argue at a dinner table where everyone was smarter than her and she loved winning anyway. Righteous, effective, popular, she says, half to herself. 3 legs. Stands on its own. She steps off her tier and down onto the floor. On her belt hang tools. Vials, a folded caliper she's turned into a charm, a wrench with sigils etched into the handle. She stops 1 arm length from Deku, glances at the pretor plates. And the corner of her mouth twitches like she wants to ask about a hinge. I'm Ceres Infernal, she says. Head technician of the Ember Works and, she gestu. Res at a knot of mages sulking near a brazier, the adult in this room whenever science is involved. We're not doing a lecture, Deku says, pleasantly firm. Good, Ceres says, just as firm. Becca, yous have been asking these lords to consider a replacement for the foundry cycle since before you fell out of the sky. She pulls a coin-sized device from her pocket, a sliver of brass layered with sigils and a thin crystal thread. The conclave lords make bored faces. The scribes lean forward like they've smelled new ink. Deku tilts his head a hair. Ceres holds the device up between thumb and finger. Consent-bound argent, she says. Power drawn from oaths freely given. Service, protectorship, civic duty, rather than the paying tax. Tuned right, the engine only reads a pledged task and drains until it's done. The rush isn't a thrill. It's a weight. You can't abuse it without lying to yourself, and the reading hates lies. A lord yawns with malice. So we run a city on good intentions. On commitments, Ceres says. Those have kept more bridges standing than fear ever did. Ul taps her gavel. No toys. No sermons. We don't rebuild systems during a spectacle. Deku nods toward the ceiling. Then why is your ceiling about to host one? Half the hull looks up on reflex. That's how they see the first mirage flicker. Thin light cutting across shadow like a knife. The hair on Deku's arms lifts. Rivena's sword does the same. The warding sigils over the arch burp in warning. Seraphiel's voice slides in from nowhere and everywhere at once, soft and precise as a scalpel. Limited extraction of high-value signatures. No collateral. Glass threads prick through the air between the rafters. 6 points of light blossom into angels not wearing poetry, sleek armor, low wings, faces covered, movements like math. Their entry pattern brushes the balcony and the scribes, tables only, ignoring the lords entirely. Surgical. Infuriating. Guards snap shields up. The conclave panics well. Crisp chaos, polished terror. Ul drops her gavel. It clatters away like it's embarrassed to be associated. Deku's moving before the first seraph lands. He plants a boot on the lectern, vaults, and meets the strike meant for the lead scribe's neck with his gauntlet. Sparks chase along his knuckles. The scribe blinks like someone slapped him with a book and falls under the table. Deku pivots, snags the angel's forearm, and shoves. The seraph's wings flare to counter. It glides back 5 steps like the floor just tilted out of politeness. 2 more peel for the balcony, nets like spider silk humming in their grips. Rivena disappears from Deku's right and appears on the balcony rail like a punctuation mark. She cuts one net in half and hooks the thrown weight back into the attacker's helm slits. The angel jerks like a marionette and flips. She lets the net do the work, then boots the body into its friend. Both crash into a banner and tangle up like tomorrow's problem. Ceres shouts something Deku doesn't recognize, shoves the consent coin into a brazier's core, and slaps a copper plate onto the brazier's side. The brazier coughs out a dull red ripple. Sigils around the room react like they've been taught manners. An invisible pressure drops into the hull, more gravity than heat. Ceres raises her voice. If you're a citizen with hands and a pulse, listen up. Pledge out loud. I'll hold, I'll shield. I'll keep my neighbor breathing. Say it and mean it. The engine will drink that, not your pain. Nobody moves for a second. Then the demon matriarch with ink-stained hands steps forward and speaks the words. Voice steady. A guard follows, then a scribe, Then a kid who looks like he ran messages his whole life and now gets to do something else with his legs. The brazier hums. The air changes. The light along the conclave floor lines up in a pattern that feels like everybody tightening their grip on the same rope. The next seraph lands hard and brings a blade down in a clean, surgical arc at the engine. Deku wedges himself between it and the strike. He doesn't have a perfect block. He has 2 inches of decision. He uses them. The blade skids. The edge bites his shoulder plate and keeps going until a strap snaps with a pop. He doesn't care. He's already inside the seraph's guard, hand on the helm, twisting. The seraph flips. He tosses it into a column. A third angel reaches for Ceres. Rivana throws her sword. It doesn't hit the angel. It pins the angel's shadow to the floor. The angel yanks and finds leverage gone. Rivana tugs the blade free with a twist that makes the shadow pop like a bubble. The angel staggers. She steps in and pommels it twice. Fast, hard, done. "Don't break my engine," Ceres says to nobody in particular, because they can't be trusted. The balcony erupts in new screams as one angel shifts tactics and tosses 3 razor threads toward the gallery seats where the common folk packed themselves in for drama. Deku grabs a chain F. Rom, a decorative column. Not decorative anymore, and whips it up with a snap. The threads bite into the links. He yanks. The angel lurches forward into a shield bash from a guard who decided today's the day he wants to go home proud. Seraphiel's voice slips through the air again, flat, annoyed. "Abort extraction. Adjust parameters." The seraphs react like a single organism. They pull back, shifting to Harrier mode. Lashing strikes meant to test the hull's new pressure more than break it. The consent engine keeps humming. The oath line grows as more people say the words like they were always there, waiting to be spoken. The hum thickens into a shield over the scribes and the engine, into a shimmer above the gallery. "Anchors," Ceres breathes, eyes bright. It's anchoring to the promises, not the room. It wants duty. Deku doesn't high-five her, but the feeling's there. Another seraph goes for the ledger, of course it does. He flicks the chain around a chair leg and jerks it into the angel's shins. The angel stumbles. Rivana finishes the job with a clean slash that ruins a wing, not a life. The angel drops its quarry. Deku kicks the ledger under a table. "Captain," Deku says over his shoulder. Not trusting anyone else to catch the tone. "Your wall. If you'll give me 7 breaths and a step, we can turn it into a closet." The captain snorts like he means it. "Do it. Shield wall to the dais." Deku shouts. "Let them hit us where we're thick. Don't overextend." They pick edges. He puts his shoulder to the job and makes a door out of shields and people willing to be a hinge. Ceres slides copper plates across the floor like she's playing a game, only she knows the rules too. The plates click into sigil grooves and glow. The engine pulses brighter. Less heat, more weight. The seraphs hit the wall and bounce. One tries to arc high toward the banner again. Deku reads the angle, runs up the side of the lectern with a hard push, grabs the banner pole mid-sprint, and swings. He meets the angel at the top of its arc, boots driving into its chest hard enough to make a sound in his knees. Both of them tumble. He lands badly, grimaces, gets up anyway. Rivana's laugh slices the tension. "Show off. Just keeping pace," he says, breath fast, not pretending otherwise. The engine whines and then levels out. The shields over the scribes calm from jitter to steady glow. The seraphs orbit once, twice, as if sampling the room for a mistake that refuses to happen. Seraphiel's voice murmurs a string of numbers like blessings turned inside out. The seraphs turn as one and spear for the archway. Bodies blurring into light. They're gone before anyone decides to chase. That's the point of a probe. That's also the moment when the whole hall realizes they're all still breathing. Silence slaps down. Then the noise hits like a wave. The gallery cheers. The scribes fall on their benches and start writing like their quills are on fire. The captain leans against a pillar and lets himself look proud for a second. Ceres steps back from the brazier, palms soot-smudged, hair a bit wild from static, eyes dancing. "Pilot holds," she says to Deku, quick and quiet so it does. NT sound like she's declaring victory to the people who would hate that. Only because about 50 strangers decided to mean it at the same time. "I noticed," he says, and he means more than the engine. Magistrix Ull slams her gavel 3 times like she's trying to beat sound into order. Enough, she snaps, shaking. This is a court, not a circus. We don't get to pretend this didn't just happen, Saris says. Sharper than she's been all morning. We were attacked, and we held because the city wanted to hold. Deku turns back to the dais. He sets his hand on the ledger. We're done playing at stories where the poor bleed so rich men can call it infrastructure. Here's the offer. He counts it off on his fingers. Shut the pits. Convert the foundries to consent-bound argent. Starting with the districts that fed those pits. Pull restitution from the signatures in this book. Post the names. Not a drama. A list. Call it the Crimson Accord. A lord in a crown shaped like a lionfish bristles. You don't dictate decrees. Then call it a suggestion you're smart enough to steal, Deku says. A low buzz runs around the thrones. Pride wrestles with fear, fear cheats. Riven. A watches which way each pair of eyes flicks, mapping allies and liars with lazy patience. Saris folds her arms and waits for the universe to catch up with her math. The captain clears his throat. Ocean to recognize the accord for provisional trial in 3 districts, he says, aiming his words at Ull but his face at the room. Formal vote now. Duration 30 days. Full review after. Scribes W. I'll post the names relevant to the restitution. Ull looks like she swallowed a pebble sideways. You don't move motions. I secure the building when angels try to steal our record keepers, he says, and lifts his chin. I'm moving the motion. Laughter barks up from the gallery. It's not polite. It's clean. A lord who hasn't spoken yet, older, scarred, too patient to be stupid, leans forward on his armrest. Seconded, he says. I prefer experiments that don't involve me on a pike later. Ull can't stall without losing whatever she calls her spine. She rattles through a litany of procedures like throwing sand in gears. It doesn't stop anything. Scribes stand. Hands rise. The tally moves. A few no's. More yeses. One abstention that reads like a threat later. Provisional Crimson Accord adopted, a scribe calls. Voice thin but steady. Districts named. Ironmarket, Gutters Reach, Outer Ring 3. The gallery's cheer is a thunderclap with teeth. Rivena's grin is small and full of knives. Saris lets out a breath she didn't know she'd held and glances at Deku with a look that lands square between, I can work with you, and, don't make me regret this. Ull slams her gavel again, mostly out of habit. Further conditions, she snaps. If the engine fails or the districts riot, the accord terminates and the petitioners are barred from this hall. We're not petitioners, Rivena says, too pleasantly. We're the reason you still have a roof. Ull pretends she didn't hear that. One more formality, she says to Deku, voice sticky with faux gracious. Since you insist on playing at rulership, you'll bind your alliance, publicly, so we know who to blame when the food runs late. Rivena's jaw sets. Try it, she says, low. I'll bind his blade to your. Deku touches her wrist. Not. Quiet. Just. I've got this. He steps onto the dais. The coil of chain waits on its plinth, the old oath prop. He ignores it. He turns to Rivena and offers his hand, palm up. Rivena of the red line, he says. Just loud enough to fill the room without shouting. Fight beside me, not under me, not above me, beside. If I start to turn into the thing I hate, pull me back or cut me down. If I stand, stand. If I fall, don't let what we built rot into a throne. The hall goes very quiet. Oaths in this room usually taste like iron. This one tastes like a promise you say at a campfire when you can't sleep. Rivena studies his face for a long, public second. Then she puts her hand in his and squeezes hard enough to test bone. Fine, she says, but if I have to cut you down, I'm keeping your helmet. A ripple of laughter breaks the tension exactly where he wants it to. Deku lifts their hands together. The scribes scribble like demons. Saris clears her throat. Also, while you're binding things, I'd like a lab. A budget that doesn't insult me, and the right to requisition 3 foundry cores at cost for conversion. She looks at Deku. I'm not asking. I'm telling the person who actually gets things done. Deku doesn't hesitate. Done. But we prioritize food distribution logistics over shiny engines. You'll get your cores if you draft me a plan that doesn't leave people cold. Saris blinks. Then she smiles properly for the first time. Deal. The hall shifts again, its center of gravity moving toward the floor and away from the thrones. Uhl notices too late. She lifts her gavel for another petty swing at relevance. A bell tolls from the arch, warding sigils settling back into place. The trial is over whether she likes it or not. Escort them out, she says, brittle. Through the dignitaries' hall. That won't be necessary, Deku says. We're not done. A murmur. Heads tilt. Rivena's grip tightens into permission. He reaches under the lectern and kicks the ledger back out into his palm. He cracks it open to one particular signature. It's beautiful handwriting. Expensive ink. Awful choices. He says the name. The lord with the lionfish crown freezes a quarter second too long. We'll post the names at midday in the districts the accord covers, Deku says. Bring coin. Bring apologies. Bring real help. Or bring armor and try to pry your page back from a wall full of people who won't be told what their lives are worth anymore. The lionfish lord's smile tries to grow new spines. It fails. They leave before anyone can turn the moment into committee. Rivena keeps step, head high. The captain peels off to yell at his men, but his eyes follow with a soft respect he doesn't voice. Ceres slings a leather case over her shoulder and matches pace on Deku's other side like she's always walked there. Outside, the conclave steps roar open onto the approach. The crowd that wasn't allowed inside, plus the crowd that decided the steps were a good place to eat after the angel attack, surges and then stops, like somebody put a hand up. What's the tally? A vendor calls. He waves a ladle like a flag. 3 districts, Deku says. 30 days. Names posted by noon. We need hands, not heroes. A woman in a rag shawl laughs, not bitter, just surprised. Hands, I got. She wiggles fingers stained with dye. Hero stuff makes my back hurt. Rivena looks sideways at Deku as they cut through the cheers. You realized you just made every private guard in the city nervous. They can learn a new habit, he says. It's a big day. Ceres falls into step, that exact smile still playing around her mouth. I like your style. Efficient. Annoying to the right people. She lifts the consent coin between 2 fingers. This will need oversight. Real oversight. A council. Quarterly audits. I'll write the draft and make it readable so lords pretend they did it. Write it, Deku says. But no lecture. Never. She looks up at him. The moment isn't big, it's clean. Also, you move like a solution. He huffs a laugh. You talk like a blueprint. Flirt later, Rivena mutters. We have districts to save. They spend the next hours making good on the thing they swore to do. Iron market first. Long alleys, chimed awnings, 1,000 eyes that know when to spot a deal and when to duck. Ceres and a crew of volunteers, kids, grandmothers. 2 grumpy foundry engineers who thought they hated her, set the first temporary engine on a fountain base that hasn't held water in years. Deku turns evacuation lanes into supply lanes with chalk and convincing. Rivena grabs a half-dozen gang captains by the pride and turns them into block leads with rotating watches and food lists. The engine spools up. The pledges come out wary, then steady, then proud. Civic oaths used to be a joke. Today, you can taste them. Gutters reach runs on knots and favors. They break the worst ones. A landlord tries to charge tolls on a relief line and NDS himself cleaning latrines for the day with a crew of kids who make sure he learns to laugh by lunch. Deku lets him keep his name. Rivena collects his toll ledger as a souvenir. Outer Ring 3's problem isn't hunger. It's water. Ceres walks the cracked pipes with a hand on the stone and hums under her breath when the pressure ticks. There, she says over her shoulder. There and there. Give me a wheel in 2 hours. No, 1. Deku gives her a wheel and 40 minutes. She beats her own brag by 5. When the first spray jumps from a valve that hasn't felt hope in a decade, the crowd screams like a stadium. Ceres takes it like a shy prize, then hides behind a clipboard to boss people into not wasting it. News outruns them. By the time they loop back toward the arena, the steps to T. He conclave have grown a notice board like a mushroom after rain. The scribes got there first. They've posted the names neat as attacks. A handful of lords stand nearby pretending not to read their own ink. A kid with an upside-down flag plants himself in front of the board with a stub of chalk and draws a box under, restitution delivered. He writes a number, 0. He grins, dares the city to move it. Rivana folds her arms, satisfied in a way that looks very similar to dangerous. We made a mess, she says. Neater than most, Deku says. A whisper moves on the wind, level as ever. Phase 2, Seraphil says. Far away and too close. Deku doesn't turn. He can feel the attention like weather. Let him watch, Rivana says. When he's bored of stalking from a pretty mirror, he can bring him self and his good cheekbones and we can discuss ethics with knives. Saris winces. Please don't stab an angel in my lab. No promises, Rivana says. The afternoon tilts toward evening. The accord signs go up on 3 corners. Food comes in without tolls. The first restitution coin clinks into a box by the notice board, dropped by Lord Steward with a posture like a stick arguing with gravity. The kid with the flag scratches a 1 into his chalk box and yells like he won the sun. That night, in the arena they've been turning into a staging ground, Deku sits on the rim of the old pit and lets his feet dangle into the place he almost died in. Rivana sits beside him, shoulder against his. Saris perches cross-legged on a crate with blueprints spread like a robe. The camp hums. Cook fires, mutter laughter. The clack of someone fixing a hinge because bad doors are rude. Rivana bumps him. You promised to walk into the conclave and you walked out with half their spine, she says. Not bad for a morning. He shrugs, smiling without trying to. Had help. Saris doesn't look up from her lines. I lied earlier, she says. Rivana tenses a hair. About what? About not giving a lecture. Saris lifts the blueprint and flicks the edge at Deku like a teacher with a chalkboard. We convert the foundries district by district. We anchor engines to civic oaths, yes, but also to maintenance guilds. We tie output to tangible tasks, streetlights, pumps, clinic grids, so people see what their promises buy. She breathes, fast, slows herself with effort, and we publish the metrics. No mysticism. Numbers on walls. Deku nods. Do it. He points at a detail. But every board that posts numbers also posts the schedule for who cleans the board and who checks the math. Saris blinks. You've run a city before. Just a classroom, he says. But it's the same shape. Rivana pushes his shoulder with hers, fondness hiding under the shove. You're infuriating, she says. Only to people who like bad rules. She tilts her head into his. Or to people who keep knives for when good rules go bad. He nods without looking away from the camp. The night moves soft. A courier brings a stack of signed conclave notices that smell like compromise. A mother laughs with her kid over a bowl that used to be a helmet. 2 guards from earlier drop off a bag of nails and don't try to make it into anything bigger than that. Saris clears her throat, suddenly not being a blueprint for a second. I'm not great at. She waves a hand in circles, quiet gratitude. But thank you for not ruining my engine when a sword tried to make it briefly 2 engines. You're welcome, Deku says. Also, she says, eyes on her plans, color in her cheeks nobody points at, you move like a good idea. Rivana snorts. He moves like a headache. A useful one. Deku lets the banter run until it runs out of steam on its own. Then he stands, stretches, and checks the watches. He still doesn't like sitting for long. He still prefers a corridor with bad odds to a chair with good tea. But tonight, the chair would have been an insult. The corridor made sense. At the edge of camp, a guard from the hall waits with a message. He doesn't try to sound official, he knows better now. Magistrix Ul insists on procedures, the guard says. But she accepted the pilot. She says if you present for registry at dawn, they'll mark your coalition as a recognized aiding party. Fine, Deku says. We'll bring donuts. The guard blinks. What's a bread with sugar? Rivana translates. He likes feeding people when he can't punch something. The guard nods like he's learning a new religion and wanders off before he starts smiling where someone important might see. Rivana leans back on her hands, etching the arena ceiling do its best impression of a sky. We make this stick, the lords will hire smarter thugs. Better tricks. We'll need a spymaster who doesn't try to sell us for a joke. Deku nods. We'll find one. Or one will find us, she says. They always do. Saris folds the last blueprint and tucks it into her case. Tomorrow I need access to Foundry 3's sub-basement. It's trapped. It's old. It's probably haunted by bad scribe decisions. I'll clear the corridor, Deku says. You keep me from breaking the expensive parts. Deal. She stands. I'll also need a commander. Who can walk into meetings and not make me throw a chair at him? Rivana raises a hand. I can behave when I have to. No, Saris says, smiling, and flicks a glance at Deku. I meant him. Deku gives them both the most innocent look he can fake. It doesn't sell. They've seen him punch angels and charm committees. They're not buying innocence anymore. He heads for the south tunnel for one last lap. At the mouth, a little knot of teenagers who volunteered for Watch Tonight straighten like they've been caught having fun. One of them holds out a chipped mug filled with something not entirely illegal. For you, she says. Because you made the conclave say yes to something we actually wanted. Deku takes the mug, sips, coughs once because the drink bites and then laughs. Strong, he says. We made it, the girl says. Proud. It's basically a potion. Saris, who appeared the second someone said the word potion, leans in, sniffs, and waves the mug away before Deku loses a taste bud. No more of that until we have a clinic in place, she says, soft but iron. You can be brave without pickling your throat. The girl salutes like a kid at play and turns that salute into a real posture by accident. Yes, engineer. Saris corrects. Save the titles for people who like being tall on chairs. I like being short near valves. Deku passes the mug back with a grin and a street. Look at the watch schedule pinned to the wall. They've staggered it right. They're learning the rhythm. He loops back through the arena, past fires where people tell stories about what they did today and only embellish a little. He climbs the lock tower because old habits die mean. From up here, the city looks less like a wound and more like a puzzle someone finally started taking seriously. A shimmer flickers at his shoulder, the ghost of a balcony, the memory of a choir. Seraphiel's reflection hangs there, more suggestion than man. The eyes are the same. Exact, tired, honest in a way that makes you mad. You will force my hand, Seraphiel says, quiet. You'll force your own, Deku says. But you can also choose not to. Choice, yes, Seraphiel says, like he's weighing the word for cracks. You have a gift for making it contagious. Good, Deku says. Maybe it's a disease. The angel's mouth almost smiles. Almost. You turned an execution hall into a council. That will be hard to forgive. Good, Deku says again. He doesn't add more. He won't beg a god for permission to do the right thing. The shimmer fades. The night doesn't get colder. It doesn't need to. Everyone is already awake. Rivana finds him on the tower and knocks her shoulder into his. Tomorrow, she says. Foundry, he says. Conclave registry, Saris adds, appearing like a cat who heard her name. And audits. And a shop for the engine coils because I refuse to wind them by hand. Done, Deku says. Rivana smirks. And then we pick a fight with a gate lord who thinks honor is a weapon. Tomorrow, he repeats, and doesn't feel tired, not in the way that makes you slow. Just full, the good kind. Below them, the kid at the notice board scratches another line under, restitution delivered. The number bumps from 1 to 3 and then to 5 when a woman with a rich coat and a thin mouth drops coins while pretending she's not. A little pack of street urchins counts very loudly and claps exactly 5 times. Each clap a little hammer on an old nail. Deku watches, memorizes the sound. He files it with the other ones he keeps in his chest. The snap of a chain breaking, the hiss of a net missing. The brittle crack a court makes when it admits it can learn. They climb down. The fires burn to embers. The night doesn't promise anything. It doesn't have to. They already made the promises they can keep. Chapter 2 end. Chapter 3. The Gatebreaker's Lesson. The Black Gate doesn't wait for speeches. It spits a spear through the dust the second Deku steps into view. He tilts his head. The S-pair hisses past his ear and sticks quivering in a cart like a stubborn idea. The gate's battlements blossom with shields. Horns blare. Then the doors part and Karthos walks out in full iron like a promise you can't dodge. He's taller than Rivana by a head, broader than any 2 guards at his back, and moves like he was carved to fit armor and then learned to be kind anyway. The troops behind him. Fresh, tight ranks. Conscripts with the posture of people paid in rations and guilt. Rivana leans close without taking her eyes off the field. He's not a butcher, she mutters. He's a gate with legs. Good, Deku says. I don't have time to fix another butcher. He steps forward, empty hands up, helm retracted so everyone sees his face. Karthos, he calls. Field challenge. Terms. The gate commander doesn't posture. He plants his blade, voice even. Name them. No killing conscripts, Deku says. No fire beyond the field. The side that breaks the terms loses the gate. Karthos's mouth does the smallest quirk. Impressed despite himself. Honors of surrender. Safe passage with your wounded. You're dead if you insist. And my word that nobody uses them like bargaining chips. Arthos glances at the rows of helmets behind him, then to Deku's flank where Rivana rolls her neck like a wolf deciding which leg to bite first, and to a little knot of volunteers hauling a portable engine plate in on a handcart with Ceres bossing them like a queen of wrenches. Accepted, Karthos says, and touches 2 fingers to the rim of his helm. He raises his voice. Form a ring. Witness. The troops draw a chalk circle in the dirt with boot heels and discipline. No one cheers. Good. This is work. Rivana taps Deku's knuckles with the flat of her blade. Don't get pretty, she says. I'm allergic, he says, and steps in. Karthos opens with a test cut. Clean, quick, meant to taste distance more than throat. Deku lets it shave air and answers with footwork, the kind that makes bad fighters overcommit and good fighters snort. Karthos doesn't overcommit. He presses, patient. The rhythm settles. Steel, breath, grit, Karthos pushing, Deku giving exactly enough and no more. The conscripts whisper to each other in their helmets. You can hear it as a tight hiss under everything, 100 what-ifs trying to become one fact. On the wall, a flag lifts in a breeze that feels like room waiting to see who becomes the loudest story. Deku catches Karthos's blade on his forearm plate, takes the shove, and pivots into the pressure, palm glancing the flat away, heel coming up for a liver shot that would make a bull sneeze blood. Karthos turns his armor into the kick and grunts instead of folding. Respect, not surprise. Why the terms? Karthos asks, swinging narrow. You could storm, lose fewer than we would. Because I need you tomorrow, Deku says, stepping inside and tapping Karthos's wrist just so. The sword deflects the wrong direction and hits nothing. I can knock down a door or teach it to open. Above them, Ceres slaps a copper plate onto the portable engine and calls, do not aim magic at my coil or I'll cry in public and make all of you feel weird about it. Rivana laughs without looking. She means it. The duel tightens. Deku reads the tiny tells. Breathing cadence, shoulder dip, the way Karthos's left knee refuses to lock all the way from an old injury, and shifts aim. Not for weak points, but for balances. He keeps the pressure where it forces Karthos to protect people behind him more than himself. Good, Karthos mutters, blade skidding of Deku's gauntlet with a sound like someone filing a promise. I hate pretty fights. Same, Deku says, and then everything breaks. A ripple slides through the ranks behind Karthos, too neat, too quiet. Shadows flicker where torches should stay steady. 3 helms tilt in the same wrong rhythm. Deku catches it, and at that exact heartbeat a crossbow bolt whistles not at him or Karthos, but at the engine plate Ceres just anchored. Rivana moves faster than curses. Her sword flicks and the bolt splits in 2, halves clattering to the stone. She points the tip at a patch of shade like she's scolding a cat. The shade peels back into a person with a grin you want to wipe off with sandpaper. Hi, she sings. Curled horns, narrow hips, silver cloak. Vexera. Deku doesn't turn his head, he reads another cut from Karthos and keeps his voice calm. Friend or idiot, why not both? Vexera purrs, stepping into view, knives pinging as she drops them to show she's here to talk. She palms a coin and rolls it over her knuckles while her eyes map everyone's reactions. Karthos's adjutant sells maps to the wrong dinner guests. I was mid-proof when your duel started, and then the proof deck. IDED to use your pretty engineer as a bullseye. Ceres snaps, stop calling me pretty. Vexera's grin sharpens. Oh good, she's alive. Inside the ring, Karthos tries to shove the distractions to the edge of his vision and fails because he's not an idiot. Identify the traitor. He orders his own men, voice going commander, not performer. Hold fire. The wrong rhythm helms stutter. One drops his spear half an inch. Vexera's coin vanishes. Left flank, third in. Name of Baylor, smells like ink. She says it like she's complimenting a wine she plans to steal. Baylor bolts. Deku and Karthos both move without calling it. Deku goes low, Karthos goes long. The gap between them becomes a net that doesn't care whose emblem you wear. Baylor slams into Karthos's open hand, gets turned like a door, and stares into Deku's visor while trying to swallow his own tongue. Who paid you? Deku asks, voice so normal it's the only scary thing about it. Lord Marvane, Baylor blurts, terror unspooling fast. He said if the gate fell to the anomaly, I was to make sure the engine didn't hold so the city blamed. Rivana yanks him by the collar like he's a fishing line. Good boy, she says, and hands him to two conscripts who look offended on behalf of competence. Karthos doesn't take the opening to lunge. He steps back, kicks dust over the chalk ring with his boot. Duel suspended, not lost. He turns to his troops, voice carrying. No one touches the engine. No one touches the civilians. Eyes on hands, not banners. He looks to Deku. Your terms stand. Good, Deku says, and then the sky cracks. Thin white threads stitch across the battlements, serif scouting lines, clean as scalpel marks. You can feel the temperature of the world change when heaven peers in through a pinhole. The breath before the incision. Limited strike, Seraphiel's voice says from nowhere, clinical. Objective. Disable engine nodes. Collateral. None. 3 angels cut down like geometry. They don't even flare wings. They just arrive, blades tucked close, movements pre-solved. Rivana is already under one of them, spine bending in a way that cheats anatomy, blade shaving armor. Deku catches the second's wrist and redirects the strike into stone, sparks bursting like angry bees. The third angles for Ceres. Ceres doesn't panic. She slaps both palms on the copper coil and shouts, pledge, now. At 24 conscripts like they're her crew, not his. I'll hold, I'll shield, I'll keep my neighbor breathing, they bark, not because they understand engines but because a woman too. LD them a sentence that sounded like something you'd want to be true when your ribs hurt. The coil hums. A soft pressure swells. The angel's blade hits a field that wasn't there a second ago and skips. It still kisses Ceres's sleeve and carves cotton. It doesn't carve Ceres. She swears with the creativity of a genius and boots the angel in the knee like she's kicking a stubborn valve. It stumbles a beautiful, offended inch. Abort, Seraphiel says after a single clean beat. The angels break away in a single note and are gone, the threads sewing the sky shut as if embarrassed. Karthos watch. Them leave in the way Deku doesn't chase a thing he can't reach. He nods once. Quiet respect. Your engineer. Bossy. Deku says. Perfect. Ceres points a wrench at the sky and then at Vexera. You, glitter lizard, if you throw anything near my coil again, I will enroll you in a science fair and make you stand beside your poster for 6 hours while people ask you to explain the difference between amperage and attention. Vexera claps, delighted. She's exactly my type. Rivana groans. No, maybe, no. Rivana repeats, which is code for watch your hands. Karthos resets his grip on his sword. We resume. Yeah, Deku says, and the ring reforms like muscle memory. They go again. The crowd's breath catches when Deku abandons flashy gambits in favor of something that looks like boredom. 1,000 micro decisions that grind a better fighter down at joints you can't flex pride against. Karthos presses. Deku skews angles, knits little failures into bigger ones, forces B. Laid lines that protect conscripts over clean kills. And Karthos recognizes it and answers in kind. Guarding, not goring, stepping to cover his men, not seeking the headline. 2 minutes. 5:12. Sweat crawls down the back of Deku's neck inside the helm like an itch he refuses to admit exists. Karthos's breath thickens. The line of his shoulders tightens under weight that isn't steel. Deku changes one thing. He stops attacking the sword and starts attacking the stance, heel taps and shoulder nudges that would look like clumsiness if you didn't know him. The push turns to tilt, turns to teeter. Karthos's knee, the old knot lock, buckles half an inch. Deku doesn't take the throat. He snaps a gauntlet against Karthos's knuckles with a talk that vibrates bone, then hooks his foot behind Karthos's ankle and guides. For a second, it looks like a bow. Karthos lands on one knee, blade grounded, not dropped. He's not helpless. He's just honest. He looks up at Deku through his visor. Yield under your terms, he says. Voice rough. On one condition. Name it, Deku says, not moving the blade he isn't pointing. My conscripts walk out with me, not out of fear. And I keep command of my people under your banner until they decide I'm not worth following. Done, Deku says. He offers his hand. Not a rope, not a chain, a hand. Karthos grips it and stands. The ring lets out the breath it forgot to own. The gate guards don't cheer. They adjust their grips in a way only soldiers do when terror goes back in its box and respect takes its spot. Rivana whistles low. You're an annoying kind of good, she tells Deku. Then to Karthos. If you stab him later, I get first swing. Karthos snorts. Save your edge for people who deserve it. Vexera saunters into the ring like she owns the place, flips a knife, and hands Deku a folded piece of parchment she surely stole from someone who thought they were in charge. Lord Marvain's meeting schedule, she says, smug. You'll love the part where he tries to sell the outer ring to acquire that doesn't negotiate. Cute trick, Rivana says. You nearly ruined a duel to do it. Duel survived, Vexera says. Traitor identified. Engine unstabbed. Saris jabs a thumb at the coil. Because you got lucky and because half this gate said vows faster than your brain processes guilt. Vexera slides her eyes to Deku. So, rules, then. If I'm going to keep pulling splinters out of your enemies from behind their eyes, I need to know where your lines are. Deku wipes grit off his gauntlet and meets her look with the kind of steadiness that makes tricksters decide if fun is worth work. No civilians. No blackmail that sticks to kids or kitchens. No poisoned wells, literal or cultural. You want in, your family. Family means you pull pranks for us. Not on us. She squints, weighing if a leash made of words is worse than no leash at all. And if I get bored, then I'll find you better work, he says. If you betray us, I'll say your full name out loud where it hurts. Her grin returns, smaller, realer. Oh, she says. You're dangerous. Rivana slides beside Deku in that unhurried, territorial way that says she's not threatened. She's amused and armed. He's taken, she deadpans. Relax, Vexera says, passing her a coin. It has a cat on it wearing a crown. I steal thrones, not husbands. Rivana flips the coin back without looking. He's neither. Karthos clears his throat. The gate, your gate, Deku says, loudly enough for the ranks. Under your command, under the accord. You report to the Coalition Council, Rivana for field, Saris for engines, me for when it gets stupid. We're not a mob, we're a city learning to use its hands. Karthos turns to his troops. Stand down from siege posture, he orders. Switch to relief and repair. Helmets off. Everyone meet the people you're guarding. Helmets pop like seeds. Faces appear. Young, old, scarred, scared. One conscript with a missing. G-Tooth grins at Saris like she rebuilt his knee without touching him. Saris points 2 fingers at him. You, she says. Congratulations. You're a valve technician now. Go with those 3 and learn what water is supposed to do. He salutes with the wrong hand and runs the right way. She doesn't correct him. She just smiles at Deku like he's a blueprint with opinions. Packed time, Vexera says. Rolling shoulders like a cat getting ready to pretend it doesn't want a lap. I don't do chains, I don't do paperwork in triplicate, and I reserve the right to steal from people who bore me. Rivana cuts in with a blade-thin smile. You steal for us or you don't steal at all. And you sleep with a knife under your pillow like the rest of us, but you don't point it inward. Vexera pretends to consider. Her eyes flick to Deku's hand. What's your vow? He offers it, palm up, same as he did for Rivana, but this time he adds a line he didn't know he had until he says it. Walk with me, he says, and when I start making excuses, rip them out of my mouth. Vexera's laugh is quick, surprised, edged with something warmer. She lays her palm to his. A faint seal hums between skin and skin. Not a brand, a bridge. Ceres's coil thrums once like it approves the chemistry. Rivana rolls her eyes and pretends not to smile. Commander Vexera, Deku says for the listening walls, spywork lead. You answer to the council and you publish your audits. Private secrets keep tyrants alive. She winces. Publish. Summaries, he says. Names redacted when they keep bystanders safe. She says. Finding the line fun to toe already. We'll argue in offices. Rivana elbows Deku. Give her a job before she steals yours. He gestures toward the gatehouse. Start with Marvain's map sellers. Karthos. I want your quartermasters cross-checked by someone who hates numbers less than I do. Done, Karthos says. And, the duel stands. He extends his forearm. Deku bumps it. The troops. See that and stand taller in a way no banner buys. Work spills into motion. Lines get rerouted. The gatehouse empties of cowards and fills with people who know how to fix hinges. Vexera disappears, and reappears with a ledger in her teeth and a twine-wrapped bag of bribes in her hand, drops both onto Ceres's work table, and says, "You like numbers." Marvain pays with foreign coin. Trackable. Ceres lights up like a forge. Rivana organizes relief squads with rude efficiency, and when a conscript drifts toward cruelty out of habit, she clips his ear and says, "Pick a better hobby." He blushes, and changes the bandage he was about to rip off too fast. The sun never changes here, but the feel of the light does. The black gate, once a border, starts behaving like a door. Later, Deku walks the wall with Karthos because that's where fence menders should be. They don't talk much. Karthos finally says, "You fight like someone who had to learn that winning clean is harder and worth it." Or I'm lazy, Deku says. Bodies are heavy. Quote. Karthos grunts a laugh. Marvain will come, he says. With lawyers. With lances. Good, Deku says. I'm better at one than the other. A shimmer skates across the air near the parapet. Seraphil, not stepping out fully, just letting attention be seen. His voice folds into the stones. Your dual restraint altered 5 projected outcomes, he says. Fewer dead today, more loyalty tomorrow. Unacceptable variance. Then adjust, Deku says. Or don't. I'm busy. A pause. If an algorithm could sigh, it would sound like that. Phase models recalibrated, Seraphil says, and is gone. Karthos leans on the parapet, watching the city's veins begin to unclog. The angel respects you, he says. He respects math, Deku says. I plan to ruin his equations until he respects people. Down in the gateyard, Vexera saunters up to Rivana and bumps shoulders like she's learned the currency already. Nice throw earlier, she says. Pick a better ambush next time, Rivana answers. Then tilts her head toward Deku without looking. He makes it look easy. It isn't. Vexera follows the tilt, eyes narrowing with a thief's version of tenderness. He's a house, she says softly. More to herself. Everyone keeps trying to turn him into a throne. Let them try, Rivana says, the smile behind her teeth turning wolf. It keeps us warm. Ceres app. Ours with a clipboard of crimes for Deku to sign into justice. I need your initials on a requisition and your eyes on a flowchart that will make you cry, she says. Perfect, Deku says. I love crying. They stand there, just long enough to take one full breath together, and then the work splits them like it should. Karthos goes to tell his people what honor looks like after noon. Rivana goes to bully a stubborn winch into feeding people faster. Vexera goes to steal a scandal and leave an audit trail like a glitter bomb with footnotes. Ceres goes to turn vows into light. Deku steps back, beneath the arch that used to feel like a mouth and now feels like a promise. He sets a chalk mark on the stone at shoulder height. Gate, held by consent. He doesn't add a date. Days here don't mean what they should. The mark means more. A kid in a too big helmet stops, squints at the chalk, and nods like he's learned a new word. Captain, Deku says to Karthos over his shoulder, even though they didn't call him that yet. Karthos turns. Yes, tomorrow we check the locks under Foundry 3, Deku says. Bring someone who knows how to be afraid without stopping. I have a few, Karthos says. And lets himself smile in public now that he's decided not to be embarrassed by good days. Vexera pops up beside Deku, somehow halfway up a wall without using a ladder. One more condition, she says, upside down. For what? For us, she says, flipping to land in front of him, hair catching air like a secret. If I ever tell a joke that puts a kid in a coffin, I'm out. Done, Deku says, simple as breath. She leans in, close enough to fog his visor if it were down, eyes glinting like bad ideas she plans to use on bad people. You're going to have to kiss me someday, she says, teasing, testing, truth under lace. Not because I want it, but because I'll deserve it. Earn it, Deku says. Then remind me, Rivana snorts. Get in line, not jealous. Logged. Saris yells from the coil, if you're going to flirt, do it while lifting something heavy. They laugh, because the world didn't end and it tried twice. Then they lift. By night, the Black Gate holds under banners that don't match but still line up. A supply run moves through without bribes. A wounded conscript eats at the same table as a girl who used to sneak around this wall because guards wouldn't let her see the sunrise that isn't. The ledger Vexera stole coughs up 4 names by lantern light. Karthos drafts a letter to his mother and doesn't crumple it this time. Deku stands on the threshold and listens to the noise of a place relearning the sound of enough. He doesn't make a speech. He rolls his shoulders, checks schedules, and walks the line until the line walks itself. The Black Gate is a door now. Tomorrow, they'll hold it open for people who never thought they'd get to pick a direction. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Break the Foundries. Deku doesn't say please. He vaults a spool of cable, boots plant on the grated floor. And he slams his palm onto the emergency mushroom switch. Full stop. Belts lock. Presses seize. The foundry's roar trips over its own throat and chokes down to a hot, angry hush. Workers flinch like they expect the world to hit back. Across the floor, the overseer steps out of his glass office with the confidence of a man who thinks paperwork is a weapon. Tall, neat, cloak pinned with a triangle of stamped argent. He lifts 2 fingers and the foreman go for the restart levers out of habit. Rivana gets there first. Her sword kisses a lever handle and leaves it useless. Don't, she tells a foreman, voice calm as rain. You like your fingers attached. Karthos and his squad roll in behind the line, helmets off, hands open, shields on their backs turned to look like nothing at all. Relief, not raid. It changes the temperature of the room. The overseer smiles with perfect pity. You shut this down, you starve 3 districts. Commerce needs certainty. Pain is predictable. Pain is lazy. Deku cuts in, already moving. He jumps onto a catwalk ladder, takes the rungs 2 at a time, and points at the nearest kill switch. Tie it off. You. He nods at a wiry mechanic who looks capable and furious. Walk with Saris and don't let anyone sweet-talk your hands. Saris is already at the main boiler reading the foundry like it's a messy diary. She snaps a copper plate into a socket, winces at the whine, and whistles for a runner. I need the consent coil and a wheelbarrow of clean water and I will marry the first person who brings me a rag that isn't a disease. A teenager sprints. Vexera doesn't sprint. She appears beside the overseer like she stepped out of his shadow and smiles with too many teeth. Quick survey, she says, flipping a black coin across her fingers. When you sign off on soul tithe transfers, do you doodle hearts or knives in the margins? The overseer's smile doesn't move. His eyes do. He flicks a glance at the ceiling's ventwork. Then at a brass valve with a red cap near the north wall. Deku files those looks down to pins he can push later. On the floor, a compressor belts out a stubborn clank. Saris slaps it like it insulted her mother. Don't die on me, she says. You're getting repurposed. The overseer finally drops the polite. Foundries run on tariffs that exist because people keep their promises when it hurts, he says. Your Crimson Accord is sentiment with a paint job. When the lights go out, citizens riot. Then you'll beg me to reopen the old machines. You mean the machines that eat people, Deku says, setting his gauntlet under a rattling shaft to take weight while a mechanic yanks a pin. Hard pass. Your engine demands consent, the overseer says. Consent evaporates under pressure. Saris straightens, hands black with carbon, sweat streaking her cheek. Pressure is what turns vows into bridges, she says. And this time they get to walk on them, not fall off. The overseer flicks his cloak. Subtle signal. On cue, Shutters slam open on the upper gantries. 6 cages hiss. Something inside them moves like boulders learning to breathe. The nearest foreman drops his wrench, face gone paper. Oh no. Quote. The cages release. Hulks drop to the floor. Bare-chested, glowing vein filaments pulsing in time with the old foundry grid, eyes wrong with borrowed light. They bellow. A sound that isn't rage so much as instructions burn through the throat. Argent flooded, Saris says, horror pushed down to the bone and buried with bolts. They juiced them as fail-safes. The overseer flexes 2 fingers. The Hulks charge. Karthos doesn't wait for orders. Non-lethal, he calls, already moving. His shield slams into a Hulk's knee from the side, the joint folds and the giant eats floor. It keeps trying to stand like the command didn't include physics. Rivana darts up a ladder, takes the high catwalk, and cuts a hanging chain so it whiplashes low across 2 Hulks' chests. They reel. Deku hits the first Hulk across the jaw with his forearm and feels the surprise jolt in the bones, less like hitting flesh, more like hitting a drum carrying a current. Saris, where are they wired? He asks, ducking under an arm the size of a tree trunk. Back of the neck, she says, sprinting with 2 mechanics, coil-cradled like a child. They're slaved to the grid. The foundry tells them, defend throughput, and they think that means, crush everything that changes yesterday. Great, Deku says. He leaps, grabs a pipe, swings around a Hulk's shoulders, and plants his fist at the base of its skull with a twist that snaps a coupling. The glow in its veins stutters. It blinks, human in the eyes for half a beat, and slumps to a knee, breathing like it forgot how. Stay down, Deku tells him. The man shudders but nods. A second Hulk catches Deku across the ribs with a backhand that steals breath and steals a curse on the way out. Deku tumbles, rolls through it, and comes up with a chain from a hoist wrapped around his fist. He uses the chain like a leash across the second Hulk's shoulders and pulls, not to choke but to redirect. It stumbles sideways into a trolley of steel ingots with a clang that knocks a foreman back into a pile of safety signs nobody's read in years. Promises, Saris yells, snapping plates onto the side of the boiler. I need promises, short ones. Karthos bellows to his squad, say it. His soldiers say the thing Saris taught them at the conclave. I'll hold, I'll shield, I'll keep my neighbor breathing, but Saris shakes her head, eyes on gauges. Different job, different words. Deku plants his boots, takes a breath around the ache, and yells from his belly, voice cutting through metal noise. Foundry crew, with me, say it. I'll build, I'll mend, I'll carry my block. A mechanic with grease up to his elbows spits blood and shouts it. Then another, then 20. The coil hums. The ambient glow shifts from cruel white to core deep red, less burn. More warmth. Saris's engine drinks and steadies. The overseer watches the current tilt and bares his teeth. You'll burn out in an hour. Duty's a fickle fuse. Vexera slides past him, flips his cloak aside with 2 fingers like she's checking for a second heart. Duty's elastic, she says. Your models break when people like themselves. He tries to elbow her off. He doesn't connect. She isn't there anymore. Another Hulk barrels for the coil. Rivana drops from the catwalk like a knife. She lands on its forearm, runs up its shoulder, and taps the spine node with her pommel. The node pops half loose. The Hulk swats at her. She rolls off its back, hits the floor in a skid, and grins at Deku like they're keeping score. 2, she says. Show off, he says. And takes a third Hulk's legs out with a sliding tackle so fast it looks fake. Karthos and his squad build a human lane around the coil. Shields absorb. Knees redirect. Nobody dies. It looks like choreography, but it's just discipline pointed at the right thing. On the far catwalk, a pair of foundry engineers, older, bitter, smart, stand frozen with a satchel that clinks wrong. Vexera appears behind them upside down, hanging by her knees from a pipe. Cute toys, she purrs. Shame if someone audited your conscience. They wheel, reach, and she steals the satchel with a flick. Inside, Arg, NT mites. Tiny coils meant to flood any competing engine with noise until it chokes. She tosses the bag to Karthos. Throw these in a bucket of water and lie to me about how satisfying the fizz sounds. He catches, dunks in a barrel, and doesn't smile. The fizz is very satisfying. Across the room, the overseer snaps his fingers again, harder. A final cage drops its door. The largest hulk staggers out. Its glow is wrong, leaping in jagged spikes, veins strung like harp wire too tight to play. Ceres sees it, goes white around the mouth. Overclocked, she says. It'll rip its own spine if we don't cut it loose. Deku meets it head-on and gets shoved 6 meters backward like he weighs jokes. He hits a pillar, ribs howling. He shoves to his feet, shakes out his right hand, and doesn't pretend it didn't hurt. He looks at the Hulk, past the mass, past the threat, at the man inside who can't find his way to the surface. Hey, he says, voice steadying because that's contagious too. I'm not here to kill you. I'm going to hurt the lock. You fight me, not them. He charges again. The Hulk swings. Deku doesn't dodge. He accepts the edge of the hit and rides it inside the arc. He slams bot. H palms into the spine coupling and twists, not to break the man but to break the command. The coupling screams. The man screams with it. The node snaps. The light stutters and shifts to the soft red of the coil. The Hulk sags into Deku's chest like a felled door. Deku grabs him, knees bent, and lets him be heavy. All around, the fight dies by degrees. Hulks slump. Karthos's men keep shields up. 3 heartbeats longer than necessary and then drop them in unison, letting their shoulders speak. We were ready, we chose not to swing. The overseer stares at the coiling red glow, at workers Clutc. Hing their chests as the rush inside them turns into something weight-bearing instead of addictive. He recovers quick enough to scowl. Your engine won't feed a city. It'll feed a moment. Then what? Then we do another moment. Ceres says, tone clipped because she's busy winning. She adjusts a valve, wipes her forehead with the back of her wrist, and looks up to meet Deku's eyes across the floor. We can hold this, her look says. If. Deku nods. He climbs the nearest crate and raises his voice without a speech cadence, just a worksite 1. Foundry is shut for conversion. There's food at the arena and triage at the old ring. If you want out, go. If you want to build the new system, stand by the coil. We're paying duty in public now. No chains. You pledge a job, the engine pays you back with light, not pain. A mechanic spits in the dust, considers, then walks to the coil with his shoulders squared. A line forms. Ceres doesn't let it be symbolic. She starts assigning tasks. You, pipes. You, gaskets. You, put down the knife and pick up that broom because your boots are tracking hell over my seals. Vexera saunters back to the overseer, now flanked by 2 of Karthos's people who look like gentlemen until you push them. She holds up a sheaf of papers stolen from his office, signatures, percentages, a tidy side ledger of losses, skimmed by turning living bodies into line items. She tosses the papers to a scribe Deku brought for this exact theater. Post it, she says. Right at the gate, big letters. Then send a copy to the conclave board and another to the kid with the chalk. The overseer lunges. Rivana intercepts with one hand on his throat. She doesn't squeeze. She just lets him feel how close that is to a bad day. Don't, she says. Due process, Karthos adds. Voice dry like he invented it 5 minutes ago and likes how it sounds. We've caught worse with paperwork this week than with pikes. The overseer goes still. He looks at Deku like a man memorizing a face for revenge. Deku gives him nothing to bounce off. Above, thin white threads tick across the dusty skylights. Seraph survey lines, faint, like the idea of an arrow. Seraphiel is watching. Deku doesn't look up. He keeps his eyes on the workers holding hands out to Ceres for assignments. Seraphiel's voice slips into the room like math through a crack. Non-exploitative energy model detected, he says. Stability factor, increasing. Karthos grimaces. That sounds like a compliment delivered by a knife. Rivana flicks her sword to shed a fleck of grit that thinks it can stick. He'll bring a bigger knife later. Later is not now, Deku says. Now is bolts. They get to it. It's not grand. It's work. Ceres runs a line of coil plates down the foundry's spine. Karthos turns squads into moving crews that can lift without throwing their backs. Vexera catches 2 saboteurs with argent mites hidden in their sleeves and makes them carry sandbags under Rivana's supervision, which is worse than prison if you like shadow more than sunlight. The overseer glowers at a corner until a grandmother with forearms like braided cable tells him to hold a light. He holds the light. The first test kicks. Gauges quiver. The coil hums like a throat clearing. Lights pop on across the floor in a wave that rolls out the doors and into the street. People outside scream like they just remembered songs. Deku breathes out a chuckle he didn't know he'd been saving. Saris leans on the boiler, ankles crossed, chest heaving. She stares at the hum like it might become a friend if she keeps showing up for it. It'll need tuning, she says. Daily, hourly at first. Audits posted. Vows refreshed in shifts so people don't burn out. We'll get you a team, Deku says. You'll get me a council, she corrects, not looking up. So it doesn't become my pet project. This belongs to streets, not to me. That's the point, he says. A foreman shuffles up, hat in hands. Ma'am, the old foundry tithe paid for guards. If we switch, the gangs will test us. Then we test back, Rivana says, cleaning her blade with a rag that used to be a shirt. Politely, loudly, we'll formalize block watches, Deku adds. Rotations, stipends, training. You don't have to like your neighbor to keep them breathing. You just have to be decent. Karthos nods. I'll assign. No, he stops himself and smiles. With a soldier's pride finally allowed past his teeth. I'll ask for volunteers who want to do this right. Vexera hops up onto the boiler beside Saris and kicks her heels like a bored cat. So, she says, eyes bright. Audit board. Saris side-eyes her. You want to sit on it. I want to make other thieves cry by making the numbers honest, Vexera says, unabashed. It'll be new. Saris laughs once, surprised into it. Fine, but if you lie, I make you write 1,000 lines in good penmanship. I'll break my wrist, Vexera says, scandalized. Then write with the other one. The room relaxes by degrees. The hulks, no, the men, sit on crates with blankets around shoulders. The coil thrums. A mother wanders in with a pot of stew and a ladle, and the line that forms is workers first, rescuers second, nobody third. Deku steps onto an upper catwalk to get out of the way and ends up on a narrow balcony that feels like it could be a stage if he wanted it. He doesn't. He leans OWS on rail and watches Saris bully a pipe into good behavior. The light off the coil paints copper in her hair. Soot smudges the side of her nose. It's a mess. It's a look. She climbs the stairs to him because she saw him pretend not to be tired and wasn't fooled. Ribs, she asks. Fine, he lies. You're a bad liar. He exhales. They hurt when I breathe. Luckily, that's optional, she snorts. Then winces and rubs the bridge of her nose like the weight of moving a city found a new place to sit. I was afraid we'd flip the switch and take 5 blocks down with us, she says, low. They'd hate the engine before it took its first breath. You were brave anyway. I was stubborn anyway. She glances at him, then at the floor, then at the coil, and the words come out measured B. 'Cause sometimes the right ones are heavy. If this fails, it fails in public. On me, on you. Good, he says. Good. We don't hide the cost. People can handle truth. They just hate being tricked. She studies his face like she's calibrating bearings to a known constant. The foundry noise drops 2 notches as someone kills a squeal in the line. The moment isn't big, it's clean. She leans in and kisses him. It's brief. Grease on his cheek, copper on her palms, breath that tastes like heat. It's an answer to a question they both asked without words while crawling under a dying machine. If I step into this with you, will you be there when it gets ugly? He doesn't grab. He doesn't pose. He smiles into it, soft, and kisses back once. Okay, she says, stepping away like she's making a note in a margin. We keep it human. Deal. She taps his chest plate with 2 knuckles. Now go tell a crowd why they're about to see me yelling at pipes for a week. He grins, breathes in, ribs complain, he ignores them. And shifts back into motion. On the floor, the overseer stands beside 2 of Karthos's guards, watching the line for the coil grow. He looks smaller when he's not framed by glass and noise. He speaks without sugar. You will need my ledgers to keep supply trains honest. I can help you convert the other foundries. I would prefer to be useful over being correct. Deku nods once. Then be useful. You're under audit the whole time. I assumed. the overseer says, resigned like a man signing up for an unfun class because it's the right one. Outside, the city adjusts to the new hum. Lamps stutter, then stand. The notice board at the conclave steps gets a new column, Foundry Conversion Status. A scribe chalks a line under, Ceres's temper, 7/10 stable, because Somio. Nay, in the hall has a sense of humor and the city needs it. Thin crystal breathes in the corner of the balcony. Seraphiel doesn't appear. He learns when to stop looming, but he notices in a way you can feel in your molars. Variance trending, he murmurs, like scolding a tide. Containment protocols will escalate. Don't, Deku says, not looking at the shimmer. Or do, and I'll aim your knife at something that bleeds you instead. A pause like a ledger being set down. Seraphiel's voice comes back smaller, honest in a way that makes Rivena's fingers itch for her sword. Method unknown. Outcome concerning. Welcome to people, Deku says, and hops off the balcony. They work until the foundry stops feeling like a throat and starts feeling like a lung. On a wall by the main doors, Ceres nails up a painted board with 3 columns. Promises made, work done, light held. The numbers tick upward with chalk. Not glory, accountability. By evening, they roll the hulks, now men named Hal, Bren, Sahada, into cots. Vexera posts the overseer's ledger at the gate and watches passers-by read names with the quiet anger of the finally informed. No rocks, no torches, just the understanding that a city knows things now and won't unknow them. Rivena leans on a pillar near the coil and bumps her shoulder into Deku's when he returns to the floor. You didn't make a throne, she says. You made a schedule. Schedules save lives, he says. Thrones start wars, she smirks. You're not wrong. You're just infuriating. Carthos strides in from the street with a stack of sign-up sheets and a bruise blooming on his cheek. Block watch volunteers, he says, proud and a little awed. We didn't have to draft. They came. Good, Deku says. Rotate them sane hours. Feed them first. Ceres W. Avs a wrench in their direction without looking up. Anyone touches my coil while drunk, I will invent a new law. Put it on the board, Vexera calls. We're doing laws now. Adorable. They log. H. The kind that shakes out the day's static without pretending it was easy. No speeches. No trumpets. Just the coil humming, the board ticking, the smell of stew and metal and a city deciding it can learn. Deku wipes his hands, checks the watch schedule, and signs a requisition for spare gaskets because nobody else thought to, and he likes when small things don't explode. He catches Ceres's eye. She nods. Rivena watches him move and grins like she enjoys puzzles that hit back. Vexera slides a sealed note into his palm with a wink. Marvain's courier route, traced and tagged. He tucks it away. Tomorrow, he says. Registry at dawn, Ceres adds. Marvain at lunch, Vexera purrs. Repairs all day, Carthos says, like a prayer. Sleep when you're dead, Rivena says, then reconsiders. No, actually. Sleep now so you don't die. They don't end the day with a prophecy. They end it by turning off one squeal in the line that won't matter to a poem but will let a kid nap without waking to a headache. The coil holds. The lights hold. The people hold. Chapter 4 end. Chapter 5. The knife you trust. The day starts with applause and ends with a knife pointed at the wrong heart. More. Ning. The conclave registry hall smells like ink, lantern oil, and stubbornness. Deku signs 3 forms, refuses 2 that try to sneak in leash clauses, and trades 1 paper mountain for a stack of keys stamped, civil access. Ceres pockets a stamped permit for foundry conversions and makes a face like she just adopted a difficult pet. Rivena leans on the doorframe, counting guards and counting lies. Then the floor drops. A scribe sprints up the steps, pale. Vote rescinded, he pants. Wool called an emergency session. Someone leaked the restitution list with addresses attached. 2 houses were hit in the night. Rivena's hand finds her hilt. Names. He swallows. 1 steward's kid. 1 scribe's aunt. Ceres goes very, very still. Who leaked? She asks. The scribe holds up a wax-stamped packet wrapped in silver thread. The seal bears a cat in a crown. Rivena's gaze snaps to Vexera's empty usual corner. The packet sits heavy in Deku's palm. He breaks the seal. Inside, a tidy list of addresses. Perfectly cross-referenced and wrong. Not just careless. Surgical. It points to people near the guilty, not the guilty themselves. It's a map designed to make the Accord look like a guillotine. Rivana's voice is flat stone. That's her coin. That's her ink. Saris scrapes a nail across the wax. Could be counterfeit. Could be. Rivana's jaw works. Or she finally sold us for a joke with good timing. Deku turns the packet over. On the back, a second mark, almost invisible, is pressed faintly into the wax, 3 dots in a triangle. He's seen it once before on a Poiso. Ned Ledger Vexera tossed back in a lord's face. Trap sign, he says. She marks the things she doesn't trust. Rivana's eyes don't soften. She also enjoys marks that make her look clever when she's wrong. Saris's mouth is a thin line. We don't have time to discuss feelings. Ul will use this to gut the Accord. Not if we gut the trap first, Deku says. Find her. They don't call it a chase. They're too practiced for that. They follow the ripples a good thief leaves when she's moving fast and mad. A dropped chalk nub by a drain cap. A thread of silver snagged on a rusted hook. A guard who says. She told me to look left and when I looked back she wasn't there. Rivana moves like a hound that learned to read jokes. Saris keeps pace with a wrench tucked into her belt like a badge. They find Vexera at noon in the House of Echoes, a long gallery in a conclave annex built to make lies sound pretty. The walls are mirrored glass layered in thin crystal, voices fold back on themselves and come out dressed for court. It's a place designed to confuse, impress, and sell verdicts. Vexera stands in the middle of it with her knives on the floor and her hands up, grinning like she never learned fear. Ah, you're early, she says. Rivana stops at the threshold. You're late with an explanation. Vexera's grin goes thin. For once, not my leak. That coin was mine. The message wasn't. Someone copied a trick I taught them and used it to make me look like a villain. Rude. Name, Deku says. She points at the ceiling. The mirror panels look back like obedience. Look up. The ceiling answers with a blade. A seraph drops without flare or him, armor too clean for this room. 3 others click into place along the gallery's ribs, bows notched with glass line. They wear human faces like masks, demure, loyal, perfectly forgettable. 2 are conclave aides Deku has walked past a dozen times. One is a clerk Saris asked for sand from last week. Seraphiel's voice threads the air, surgical. Deep cell extraction. Target. Anomalies spy. Cover. Treason exposure. The lead seraph levels a hand at Vexera. Surrender for mercy. Not my kink, Vexera says. Then, quieter to Deku. There's a thread on my spine. You can't see it. They braided a haze into the mirror. If I move wrong, I got a bystander before I know I've decided it. Rivana's fingers flex on her hilt. We cut it. Please do, Vexera says, smile pinned on with needles. Preferably without cutting me. Saris doesn't waste time being offended on anyone's behalf. She looks at the bowed mirrors, reads angles. Traces humming lines in the air with her fingers like plucking spider silk. They tuned the reflections to echo intent. Any hostile impulse gets amplified and shoved back into the nearest muscle. If you step wrong, your arm becomes the knife the room wants. Who builds that? Rivana asks. Heaven, Saris says, with help from people who like tidy floors. Deku steps forward, empty hands open. The lead seraph gestures. The glass threads groan. A mirror shows him lunging. His real foot skids an inch toward the wrong choice. He stops, breathes, resets. He looks at Vexera, not at her knives, not at the trap. You trust me? He asks. I trust that if I say no you're going to do the reckless thing anyway, she says, teeth showing. So, statistically, yes. He smiles, just a little. He tips his head to Saris. Can you invert it? Saris exhales a laugh that would be a sob if she gave it the dignity. I need copper and honesty. I have one of those. Rivana's mouth twitches despite herself. I'll get you copper. She flips her sword, slaps the flat against a column, and pops a panel loose. Wired veins glitter. She yanks a strip of conductive trim free and throws it to Saris. Saris wraps the copper around her wrist and anchors the other end to a mirror bracket. She glances at Deku. Say something true. Vexera is terrified of boredom, he says without thinking. Vexera rolls her eyes. Wow, Attacked in my own home. Ceres's coil hum in her pocket lights. The mirror nearest Deku softens its glare. The thread on Vexera's back eases half a hair. Seraphiel's voice tightens. Maintain parameters. The lead seraph shifts a toe like he's about to draw the room taut. Deku moves before he does. Just one step. Palms still out, attention cutting AC. Ross the fake images and landing on the little human things that glass never shows right. The twitch at the clerk's eye, the way the ade's jaw clicks like a bad hinge, the almost sympathy on the lead's mouth before duty ironed it flat. You're tired, he says to the lead. The seraph doesn't blink. Irrelevant. You're tired of turning rescue into erasure, Deku says, voice low and plain. You're here because it's efficient. You're not wrong, but you're not right either. Rivana snorts. We're going to die if you talk a poem at them. He doesn't. He moves. He walks past Vexera, into the heart of the mirrored hall. And lowers himself to one knee with both hands flat on the floor. The room looks confused. The room likes clean lines. Kneeling is messy. Deku looks up at the lead seraph. Take me instead. Rivana. No. Vexera. Absolutely not. Ceres. That does nothing to the math, and you know it. It resets their script, Deku says, not looking away. They want to mock. Emi choose between a knife and a partner. I decline. The lead seraph's sword doesn't waver. The mirror warms against Deku's palms. The haze flexes like a cat testing claws. Seraphiel's voice threads through the glass. An arithmetic of doubt. Anomaly prioritizes loyalty over positional advantage, he murmurs. Variant outcome. Unclear. Ceres rips another strip of copper free with a grunt that has nothing polite in it. New plan, she says, and slaps the strip across two mirror frames, bridging their charge. Rivana, give me a real oath. Rivana doesn't ask which one. She doesn't perform. She sets the tip of her blade to the floor and speaks the 5 words she only says when she's done testing and started betting her bones. I keep his back, always. The copper hums. The mirrors, edges blur. Vexera gasps. The thread on her spine loosens like a snare when someone finally touches the knot. Now, Ceres breathes. Deku explodes off the floor. Not at the seraph, at the nearest mirror bracket. He hammers it with his gauntlet. Glass shrieks. The haze buckles. Rivana is already in motion, blade slapping a line of glass until it goes dull. Vexera dives. Not for a knife, for the thin channel where 3 panels meet. Her fingers slide in, find the conductor, and snap it on simple feel. The lead seraph moves, fast, disciplined, blade whispering in a flat line for Vexera's throat. Exactly where the haze would have turned her own hand a breath ago. Deku is inside it, catching steel on steel with his bracer. It hurts. Good. Pain means he guessed right. He shoves. The seraph slides. Rivana's blade pins his sleeve to the floor. Ceres yanks 2 more copper veins and knots them together around a pillar, breath coming in neat bursts like she packed this room away when she was 10 and planned to rebuild it when she was ready. 2 side cell seraphs break their patience and loose glass thread arrows. Vexera pops up with a scarf she stole from a docket runner 3 rooms away, whips it in a circle. And the threads collect around it like angry floss. She boots the tangle into a column and blows it a kiss. Bad thread, she says. The clerk seraph on the left does something clever, rerouting the haze to try and yank Deku's arm back into his own chest. Ceres sees it coming and flips the copper junction with a grunt. The mirror catches its own hack and punches itself in the face. The crack runs like a laugh. The lead seraph recalculates and goes pragmatic. He angles for Ceres, because if you cut the brain the body trips. Deku reads the foot line, gets there. A second late on purpose so the seraph commits, and body checks him sideways into a frame that remembers being glass, not God. The collision dumps charge. The haze hiccups and collapses. Vexera's wreath frees like she was holding it for a month. Her first instinct is a joke. Her second is a tremor, tiny, not for any eyes. Deku's hand brushes her forearm, no pressure, just present. Still with me, he asks. 30% more with you than I plan to be, she says, voice steady, eyes dangerous. Permission to be extremely petty to whoever set me up. Denied, he says. Be precise. She exhales a laugh and bares teeth. Fine. The lead seraph recovers and steps back, blade ticking once as if he can't help the honest salute. He doesn't drop it. He looks at the wrecked Heia's lines. At the way Deku holds ground like a load-bearing pillar. At the engineer who bullied mirrors. At the sword duchess who cut reflections without cutting throats. At the thief who chose tenderness over a trick. He lowers the tip. Extraction aborted, he says, voice a notch lower. This operation is compromised. Seraphiel's voice is winter. Abort, he affirms. And accelerate alternate measures. Sunlance sequence to phase 2. Understood, the lead says, and the cell slips out of the room the way angels do, like you remember a door after they leave it. Silence lands, off balance. The gall. Ari's mirrors give up and reflect only the people in front of them. Rivana rounds on Vexera, blade down, words sharp. You should have told us you were marked. Vexera lifts her chin. Some other day she'd meet fury with flirtation. Not now. I didn't know until I picked up the coin and the room tried to make me hurt a child with a letter opener for looking at me wrong. Her voice wobbles once and rips it straight again. I sent a runner to you. He didn't make it. That was the point. Rivana's jaw flexes. The fury isn't for Vexera anymore. Then we kill whoever taught mirrors to think they know right from wrong. Later, Saris says. Her hands shake around the copper still humming in her grip. She puts it down with care a surgeon would respect. The vote. They arrive in the NCL Avenue Hall like the floor owes them momentum. Ul lifts her gavel, ready to declare the accord dead in the name of safety. Deku doesn't take the lectern. He takes the wall where the names post, rips the leak down, and holds it up so the gallery sees. This was a kill map, he says. Not of the guilty, of their neighbors, signed with a stolen coin. We found the cell that wrote it. They ran. Ul tries to play her favorite game, procedure. Claims require witnesses. Here, Vexera says. She steps forward and puts her own coin on the floor. She pulls a thin glass vial from her sleeve, a failsafe she never admits to carrying. A scent trigger that could have flooded this room with panic if she popped it at the right moment, and she crushes it under her heel. The snap is loud. The smell evaporates into uselessness. Her voice is clear. I burn my last ace against you. No blackmail. No fail-safes. No secret curtains. You want to know how I work? Ask. If I can't answer in public without setting a child on fire, I stop doing it. The room murmurs like a hive rethinking bees. Rivana nudges Ul's wrist with the tip of her sheath. Not a threat, a reminder she's out of time. Vote, she says. They vote. It isn't pretty. It holds. The accord stands by a margin that would make a nervous gambler rich. After, the conclave doesn't cheer. It exhales. Saris's engine crews file in and out with stamped permits like medical charts. Carthos posts relief rosters on the hall's outer wall so even idiots can see who gets bread first. Ul signs 3 audit orders with a hand that shakes and pretends it's from the weight of the pen. Deku takes the coin Vexera set on the floor and flips it back to her. We add a clause, he says. If you pull a trick that risks bystanders, you bring it to council first. Vexera snorts. You think I'm going to ask permission to be interesting? I think you're going to like not having to lie to us. She opens her mouth to make a joke and closes it. Fine, she says, surprising herself with how easy the word sits. No secrets that put kitchens in coffins. Rivana relaxes a fraction. You screw this and I take your other ear, she says. I only have 2, Vexera says. I know. They leave the hall counterbalanced instead of victorious. It's better. Victories put you on chairs. Balance keeps you moving. Afternoon turns into work. Sari splits her crews. Half to stabilize Iron Market's engine, half to prep Foundry 4. Carthos escorts the families hit by the fake leak to new block houses with guards who learn to smile this week. Rivana teaches 3 teenagers how to walk a perimeter without looking like prey. Deku posts a chalkboard at the arena with a new column. Rumor mill, checked. Under it, they write the day's lies and X, by the ones that got debunked in public. The rumor board becomes a crowd magnet. Midday, a courier blunders into the yard with a sky-pale face and a bundle strapped tight like it might grow teeth. He holds it out as if it's heavy with future. From Seraphiel, he says, and he doesn't know how to feel about being a mailbox for an angel. Rivana's hand goes to her blade. Trap. Vexera leans in. Pretty trap. Deku cuts the cord with his thumbnail and unrolls a strip of crystal-thin parchment. It's a map of the city, annotated in angel mathematics, angles, tolerances, impact projections. A thin arc drawn from a high point in the sky through the heart of Pandemonium, terminating at the arena district. A single line of tidy script beneath. Sunlance Phase 2 calibration grid. Impact envelope if fired prematurely. Ceres whispers, he sent you their homework. Rivana bares her teeth. That's either a threat or a dare. Deku folds the map back up, calm spreading through his bones like weight finds floors. Neither, he says. It's a warning. Why warn? Karthos asks, stepping up from nowhere like good commanders do when trouble smells like maps. Because he isn't a cartoon, Deku says. He wants to be right, not cruel. Rivana rolls her neck. Then let's make. Right, pick our side. They huddle over the crystal strip on a crate that once held chains and now holds soup. Ceres runs numbers with a stick on dirt, eyes skimming like a hawk's. If they fire now, she says, it'll punch the arena and carve a trench you could pour a river into through 6 neighborhoods. If they wait, we can build shield anchors, but they'll aim for the anchors. So we don't give them a single target. Scattered shelters, Karthos says. Staggered coils. Decoy heat signatures, Vexera adds. Fingers already sketching a false pattern on a second strip with stolen ink. If their sights look at skyline fire, we make bonfires where we want them, not where we live. Vena taps the arena tower they're leaning on. And we split command. I anchor triage. Ceres rides the coil line. Deku, I go up, he says. Up where? Ceres asks. He smiles like a man who found the best kind of corridor. Where the lever lives. They don't end the day staring at the sky. They end it with a work plan pinned to 3 walls and a list of block captains who didn't flinch when to LD to evacuate their own homes last so their streets didn't panic first. Evening finds them on the arena steps. The sun that isn't smears copper in the clouds that aren't. People move with the strang. Brisk grace of a city that believes it can help itself. Vexera sits on the railing, ankles crossed, coin dancing over her knuckles like a pet she hasn't named yet. She doesn't look at Deku when she talks. I had a failsafe, she says. A big one. For me. For when someone like Marvane or Ul put me in a box and smiled. I almost used it. I almost made the whole hall panic and ran. I didn't back. Oz, you were kneeling on the floor like an idiot who knows how to win ugly. So I broke it. Good. Deku says. One less trick that hurts the wrong people. She breathes out. The breath shakes. I don't ever want to be someone you have to catch every time I get scared. Okay. He says. That's it. She asks, almost irritated. No speech about trust and teams and the power of friendship. Friendship doesn't make you less sharp. He says. It makes you less alone. Keep the edge. Put the spine on the table before it breaks something. She laughs. A clear, mean little bell. Fine. But if I say something real, you have to, too. Quote. Deal. Say something you don't want the city to hear. He thinks, then shrugs like a man who stopped playing defense against himself a long time ago. I hate thrones because if I sat on one, I'd get used to it. She studies his face, sees the truth, and nods like a thief who just learned a new kind of lock. Rivana bumps Vexera's calf with her scabbard. You're in or you're out. Pick. I'm in, Vexera says. Rivana gives her the tiniest smile she owns. Good. Don't make me say it twice. Ceres steps between them with grease on her cheek and a roll of plans in her fist. I have shelters mapped, I have coils assigned, and I have a problem. We need a conductor who can carry load across 3 districts at once. You have me, comes a voice from the shade. Nixara steps out of it, eyes bruised with inherited light, hair catching sparks that aren't there. She wears a simple coat like someone who decided not to be a weapon today and wants the world to stop insisting. She doesn't try to be small. She stands like she practiced standing without chains. Deku meets her eyes. She doesn't flinch. Good. Only if you choose it, he says. I choose it, she says, steady. On my terms. Tell me the terms, Ceres says, already moving to adjust the plan around a person instead of an object. No shackles, Nixara says. No choir songs in my mouth. If I say stop, you stop. Done, Saris says. We'll build redundancies so you can stop without buildings falling on toddlers. Nyxara breathes out, for the first time since the sunlance spit her out of its throat. She smiles like a human and not a sigil. Karthos arrives with a crate of nails and a bruise like a flag. Block captains briefed, he says. No speeches needed. They brought their own. Deku nods. He checks the watch rotations, the food lines, the rumor board, the sky. He doesn't look for omens. He looks for work. There's plenty. He turns back to Vexera and holds out his hand, palm up. Not ceremony. Habit. No secrets that put kitchens in coffins, he says. No jokes that end in funerals. When you're scared, you say it in words, not in tricks. She lays her palm to his. Not mystical. Just relief pretending to be magic. She leans in and kisses him. Quick, fierce, an apology that refuses to grovel. He kisses back once, uncomplicated. They let go. Rivana watches without flinching. She likes problems that sharpen steel. She also likes people who choose not to be problems. Good, she says. Now we get ready to punch the sky. Saris snorts. We get ready to survive physics. You can punch the sky on your own time. After lunch, Vexera suggests. After the vote tomorrow, Karthos says out of habit, then catches himself and grins. Right, we won that one. They stand in the not sunset and let the city talk. Somewhere a child tries on a captain's hat and decides it smells like responsibility. Somewhere a grandmother stitches a patch O.N.A. banner that used to sell beer and now sells hope. Somewhere a clerk who turned out to be an angel lies awake, thinking about a man who knelt on a floor and broke a mirror with his hand. Deku rubs the heel of his hand where the glass bruised bone and feels the coil hum under the street like a heart. Tomorrow, the sunlance will aim. Tonight, they build. Chapter 5 end. Chapter 6. Sunlance over pandemonium. Sirens snap awake across 3 districts. Street vendors yank awnings down like shields. Kids grab siblings and bolt toward chalked arrows. Deku is already on the arena wall, finger tracing the crystal strip Seraphil sent. One line, one burn. If the sunlance fires early, it cuts the city in half. Positions, he says. No megaphone. He doesn't need it. Rivana claps once. North line. On me. We pull people out of choke points and keep exits open even if roofs fall. You trip. You roll. You don't pose. Karthos straps a coil-slung harness over his armor and checks the gate squad's clips. Wall team. Hooks only. No hero dives unless you like broken legs. Saris slams a crate open. Copper coils. Anchor plates stamped with fresh sigils and grease. Anchor crews. Pair up. If I shout, shed. You dump power into street grids, not toys. Nyxara. Nyxara steps forward. No choir shine. Just steady eyes and a coat tied at the waist. I hear you. Vexera whistles 2 urchins ov. And hands them satchels of mirror shards wrapped in cloth. Run these to the roofs on the map. Throw them only when I shout. Now, not, wow. Say it back. Now, not, wow, they chirp. Good. Don't die. Deku pulls a length of chalk from his pocket and draws a clean X on the arena floor. Command split. Rivana. Evac. Saris. Engines. Vexera. Noise. Karthos. Rooftop intercept. I go up. Rivana squints like she tastes the word. Up where? He points to the nothing sky. The spindle. Saris doesn't argue. She just holds out a clasp. When you hit gravity weirdness, clip this to anything that looks like it hates you. It'll hate me more. He takes it. Deal. The first targeting streak slashes across the clouds that aren't. The hair on forearms rises across 6 neighborhoods at once. The city knows when something wants to punch a hole through it. Move, Deku says, and the plan starts breathing. Iron Market boils. Rivana hops onto a cart and rides it through a lane T used to sell spices and now sells panic. She doesn't shout orders. She points. Hands follow the point. 2 kids crammed under a stall table. She slides, scoops, spins them toward a waiting watchwoman. With a grin that breaks fear at the edges. A butcher won't drop his blades. She kicks a cleaver out of his hand, presses a baby into his arms, and says, "This is yours now." He blinks, nods, suddenly useful. A balcony groans. She grabs its rope and angles the fall into a stair instead of a spear. Keep moving, she yells. If you can walk, you carry. If you can't, you point. Above, Carthos leads a chain of hook walkers along the roofline. Clunk, clunk, clip, like a centipede that learned to pray. When a chimney topples, they don't try to catch it, they redirect it into an alley no one's in. When a grandma's foot slips, Carthos takes her weight with a forearm and swears like a coach, not a prophet. You're fine, you're angry, keep going. Gutter's reach hums under Ceres's boots. She slams an anchor plate into a crossroad. Fists tight on the leads. Pledge, she barks. Block captains lift hands. I'll hold, I'll shield, I'll keep my neighbor breathing. No, she snaps. That's for rescue. We're running low today. Say it. I'll keep lights on and routes clear. They say it. The plate drinks it. The street lamp grid hiccups and then hums. Ceres signals the team 2 blocks over. Shed in 5, 4, now. A surge runs through copper like a muscle flex. Half the city's candles gutter. The street lamps burn steady. One woman claps a hand over her mouth to stop herself from CR. Ying at a lamplight that doesn't flicker. Nyxara steps onto the circle Ceres chalked. Tell me lines. Ceres points. Take the outer ring's hum and carry it across to the market spines. Don't channel the core. If it bites, drop it. Nyxara breathes in. Not music. Not a halo. Just focus. The coils answer her like shy animals that want to help. The engine's heartbeat spreads. Red glyphs along the avenue pulse like steady lungs. The air feels heavier and kinder at the same time. You good? Ceres asks. Nyxara nods once. Strong enough. Tell me when you're not. Deal. Vexera is everywhere. She ties mirror satchels to wind vanes, slaps heat panels onto empty rooftops, baits serif mirrors with fake bright spots, and turns 10 safe courtyards into noisy bonfires while the real shelters stay dark. 2 serif drones scout low. She backflips off a sign and tosses a shawl over one, sending it into a wall with a soft, offended clank. A skinny teenager with a split lip stares at her like she's a comet. How do you know where to put all this? Because I get bored easily, she says, then winks. And because the angel who aims that cannon thinks like a ledger. Ledgers hate mess. We make mess. She clicks a flint, lights a pile of oiled rags on a tar roof, and blows the flame into a tall, hungry flag. There you go. Glow wrong for me. Deku takes the gate. The world jitters. Carthos tosses him a grip line. Deku latches in and jumps into air that doesn't decide if down is a law or a suggestion. The city shrinks to a model of light and habit. The sun lance hangs above like a needle threaded with mourning. Wind. No. Motion in a place wind forgot. Deku swims through gravity, pulls hand over hand along nothing lines until the spindle's ribs catch his palms. The metal hums in a register you feel in your teeth. He climbs. A guard phalanx waits along the spindle. Polished armor, narrow visors, movement like choreography mapped to math. He meets the first with a palm to the throat. Rolls him into a railing with apologies in the angle, not the words. The second sweeps low. Deku steps on the sweep, drops a heel into an elbow, and doesn't watch the soldier fall. He's already pressed to the hull. Reading seams. An airlock irises open as if he asked nicely. Inside. Corridors of pearl and wire, walls whispering prayer like code. He moves through light that doesn't cast shadows. Seraphil meets him in a chamber that looks like a chapel and a switch room couldn't agree who gets to decorate. No wings this time. Light armor. Face bare. Eyes honest and tired. Don't do this, Deku says. Seraphil considers the sentence like a math problem that wants to be a mercy. Evacuation efficiency is suboptimal, he says. If we wait, casualties increase under rubble. If we fire now, we cauterize clean lines. Quote, you're not a surgeon, Deku says. You're holding a son, correct? Seraphil says, without pride. Deku steps closer until he can see the notch at Seraph. Il's mouth where he bites himself when calculations don't offer a right answer. Then point it at shields, Deku says. Not ribcages. Impossible, Seraphil says, and he doesn't sound smug. He sounds sad. Try me. Seraphil nods at the window. Prove your city can carry the load. Deku flips his comm. Ceres. Busy. She pants. Give me 5 more anchors and 1 stupid miracle. I have 3 and a temper. I'll take it. He turns back. Tell your crew to open the secondary conduits when you see red arcs over the market, then dump the sunlance into the grid. Seraphiel blinks like that sentence hurt. You are suggesting we save lives, Deku says. Together. The council will call this a betrayal. Call it a pilot. Seraphiel almost smiles. You weaponize the word like we do. Yeah, Deku says. I'm annoying. Alarms shift pitch. A display paints the city in thin white lines. Target lock blooms. Phase nominals tick green. The cannon gorges itself on light like a lung before a scream. Now, Saris whispers on comms. Anchor's hot. Nixara. Nixara's voice is steady. I have it. Rivana's line cuts in with background chaos and a laugh you only hear in people who like being useful. We're clear on the north. You shoot us, I stab a god. Noted. Seraphiel says dryly into air that isn't supposed to hear her. Deku holds Seraphiel's gaze. The woe of them stare through a decision like it's a cliff. Seraphiel's hand hovers over a control that could erase a district. Deku's hand hovers over the clasp Saris gave him. Together, Deku says again. Seraphiel drops his hand. Secondary conduits opening, he says over his shoulder. Confusion ripples through his crew. He adds 3 words they'll repeat later in strange, careful tones, by my order. On the ground, people see the sky burn and brace for pain. The first spear of light comes down not as a slash but as a sheet, red refracted through copper. It hits the new anchor's Saris slam. Med into intersections and spills sideways into street lamps and coil housings and quiet engines waiting in basements. For one breath, the city glows like a heartbeat pulled up from dirt. Lamps thrum. Wires vibrate. Shields rise in shimmering arcs over 3 markets, a schoolyard, and the arena baths. Kids scream happy and terrified. A grandmother slaps a teenager on the side of the head because he ducked under her arm instead of behind it and then hugs him like ribs are optional. Then the system shudders. Too much heat. The engine coughs. Bolts sing. Saris swears at physics. Nixara. Dump 3% into the southern loop. Rivana. Clear the crosswalk. Karthos. Take 5 men and on it, Karthos says, already flying along a clothesline like a sane man in a stupid situation. He and H's Hooksack crew slap extra lines over the street to hold up a shield plate that wants to sag into traffic. Hold it here. Rivana hears a scream from a side alley, breaks from the line, and should RS a fallen beam off 2 kids because that's an easier choice than not. Go, she says, breath fast. Your aunt will kill me if you die in a boring alley. On the roof of an old tea house, Vexa. Ra lights a decoy fire so bright the seraph scopes twitch toward it like cats. She watches the white gaze turn and grins with feral satisfaction. Chase the pretty, she mutters. Good boy. In the spindle, the floor shifts. Feedback smacks the chamber. Seraphiel steadies a panel with fingertips in the calm of someone who refused to drop a blade during a hymn. Stability at 62%, he says. Red line imminent. Give me 10 seconds, Deku says. For what? He clips Saris's clasp to a glowing rail that looks like it hates friends and yanks. The conduit screams. The room tries to throw him. He locks his legs and turns a lever that wasn't designed to be touched by anything with bones. The beam's tenor drops a note. The shield sheets thicken, go from lace to canvas. Nice, Seraphiel says, genuine. Compliment me later, Deku grunts. I'm busy saving your job. 2 Seraph honor guards decide they're done with philosophy. They step in, blades out, professional pity in their wrists. Deku releases the lever, throws an elbow, bounces one helm off a control rail, and grabs the other's wrist just before the blade finds ribs. Seraphiel pivots behind him and takes the GU. Ard's legs out with a sweep that would make a drill instructor blush. Deku looks at him. You fight. Everyone trains, Seraphiel says, and doesn't elaborate. They move in sync for exactly 6 seconds. It's enough. Guards down. System shattering. City holding. Not pretty. Good. A warning pulsing along the window line makes Seraphiel wince. Overload in 3, he says. Dump to ground, Deku says. Explain. Into the earth. Ride it out. Seraphiel raises an eyebrow. You trust your engineer. Deku grins. With my ribs. Very well. Seraphil keys a sequence with the speed of someone who never misses a beat. Dumping excess into ground lines. Brace. Ceres sees it coming. Ground, 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 she shouts, and her crews throw their weight onto copper rods sunk into the dirt at courtyard corners. The anchors spit sparks and then hum low, the old hum of dirt drinking lightning. Nyxara bites down on a cry as currents claw for her. She takes them anyway, spreads them thin, and hands them to the street like bread. Take it, she whispers, and the grid does, grateful and greedy. Shields hold. The sunlance empties into them. For a breath that feels like a lifetime and a punch. Pandemonium is inside a lantern and not under a blade. Then, quiet. No, not quiet. People. A baby wails. A dog lets go of a howl it's been holding all morning. Somewhere a musician laughs. Like a lunatic because his strings didn't melt and his fingers still work. Ceres drops to a knee by the anchor plate and blows out a breath so shaky she nearly eats her hair. She slaps the plate like it did something impressive and glares at a gauge that wants to be dramatic. Don't, she tells it. It obeys. Rivena leans on a broken stair, sweat down her throat, face split by a grin you could put on a banner. Karthos sets a kid down and waves off a thank you with a grunt because he's bad at compliments and very good at not letting bricks win. Vexera steps onto the tea house edge and salutes an absent choir with a coin flip. Missed, she calls, teasing the sky. Try again. She pockets the coin and whispers to herself, softer, don't. In the spindle, the lights go from killing to sulking. Seraphil's crew stare at Deku like they've been told the floor they worship also makes soup. Seraphil studies the readouts. Numbers line up like soldiers they actually respect. Casualties. He asks the board. Minimal, says a Seraph tech, stunned and a little delighted. Mostly scrapes. Seraphil looks at Deku's scraped knuckles and the bruise eclipsing half his cheekbone. You were consistent, he says. Rude, Deku says, smiling. A soft, bitter tone pricks the air. A remote panel blooms with a seal not from here. Lines rearrange themselves into a signature shaped like a halo that forgot what love is. Seraphil's posture changes. A line goes from spine to jaw. Override attempt, he says, flat. From who? Deku asks, though he knows the smell of rich hypocrisy. Above me, Seraphil says. It's not humble, it's geographic. The panel's command bites. The sunlance tries to retarget on its own, like a muscle spasm with delusions of grandeur. Seraphil slams a hand onto a glass bar, fingers white. I can hold, he says. Deku sets his hand over Seraphil's. Not squeezing, sharing the weight. We hold, he says. For one full count, two men carry a son away from a city. The override fails. The seal flickers like a scolded snake and retreats into thin air. Seraphil breathes out and doesn't disguise the relief. He looks at Deku, and for the first time since mirrors and knives and rules. His voice drops the choir's precision and keeps only the man's weight. I misread your method, he says, quiet. Mercy, not indulgence. Yeah, Deku says. Don't do it again. Do not presume. A junior seraph snaps, then shuts up when Seraphil raises one finger without looking away from Deku. Choose your next act, Deku says. Stand down and help us build she. Elds faster before whoever sits above you decides to send a worse idea. Seraphil's mouth twists. I cannot stand down. Then stand aside in a way that helps. He thinks. You can see it. Not stalling. Choosing. I will withdraw the platform to recalibrate, he says finally, voice back to precise. During recalibration, my crews will, accidentally, misplace a manual on distributed shielding. Messy, Deku says, pleased. I like messy. Seraphil glances at the city. Pandemonium isn't pretty right now. Broken bricks, blown tar, people everywhere. It's alive. The choir will punish me, he says, matter of fact. Then stop singing for a minute, Deku says. Hear the ground. Seraphil almost smiles again and looks offended by the fact. Do not become the thing you beat, he says. Remind me if I do. Rivena will, he says dryly, and closes his hand around a lever with a decision none of his manuals recommend. The spindle shudders. Panels fold. The sunlance noses away, new orders humming in its throat. For a strange second, it looks like a bird choosing not to dive. Get out, Seraphiel says, not harsh. Your people are about to celebrate in ways that would embarrass me. Join us, Deku says. I am not ready, Seraphiel says. Then learn to be. He doesn't answer. He opens an airlock. Deku jumps. The city catches him. Not a metaphor. Karthos's crew snags the line and breaks it the fast way. Deku slams into the arena wall like a man who insisted on the fun option and didn't earn the bruises to complain. He rolls, pops up, and walks straight into Rivena's palm, smacking the back of his head. You took too long, she says. Sorry, he says, not sorry. Ceres rounds the corner, hair on end, wrench held like a scepter. We diverted a sun and none of my plates exploded. Someone feed me, preferably not praise. Nyxara walks up under her own weight, cheeks flushed human color, hands a little shaky. Deku meets her halfway. She stops, reads his face, and nods slow. He nods back. Thank you, he says. I chose it, she answers, then adds, barely above a whisper, thanks for leaving me a way to stop. You get to stop any time, Ceres says, light, iron. Nyxara smiles like the world finally started matching a boundary she once drew in chalk and got mocked for. Vexera lands on the rail beside them and bumps Deku with a boot. The sky mist, she sings. Turns out, we're annoying. We are, Rivena says. It's a brand. A cheer swells up from the market, small at first, then bone deep. The rumor board at the arena gets 5 new lines. Sunlance fired, redirected. Shields up. Yes. Casualties. Few. The chalk-wielding kid from the steps adds, thanks, nerds under, engine crew, and makes a heart that looks like a potato. Ceres pretends not to see it. She sees it. Karthos lifts a hand. The block captains pick up the cue. They don't stampede into party. They do a head count. They fix a bent sign. They carry 2 people in blankets. Tawa. Rode the clinic with gentleness you don't get from orders. Deku leans on the arena gate and lets the noise fill his ribs where the ache loosens. No speeches. He just watches his weird, stubborn Colati. On turn a near ending into a working afternoon. Seraphiel's voice brushes the edge of the world like someone exhaling near a closed window. Phase 3 will not be mine, he says, very soft, as if embarrassed to admit he knows it. Be ready, always, Deku says. Rivena hooks his elbow with hers. We did a ridiculous thing, she says. Tomorrow we'll do paperwork. It's almost as dangerous. Ceres slides a folded manual into his hand without looking at him. The cover reads, Distributed shielding for idiots who won't stop helping. The first page is all real math. The second page has a doodle in the corner. A coin with a cat wearing a crown, crossed out and replaced with a coil. Vexera notices, snorts, and steals the manual to add footnotes about how to make decoys shine less. Like cheap lies and more like convincing bait. You get 1 page, Ceres tells her. I'll use 3, Vexera says. You get 1, Rivena echoes, deadpan. Vexera pouts and then obeys, because that's how family works. You push. You get pulled back, you laugh. The sunlance becomes a star in the distance, not a knife. The city holds because it learned a new habit and liked it. Deku cracks his neck, checks the watches, marks 3 new anchors on the map, and helps a kid tie her boot because she's too busy staring at the sky to look down. When she thanks him, he says, next time, you keep someone else's boots on. And she nods like she's been drafted into a game she wanted to play anyway. They don't toast. They don't kneel. They go back to work, grinning like thieves who stole a day from a god and used it to fix gutters. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Make it a city. The vote board hits triple digits before breakfast. Coins clink, chalk lines jump, and the rumor column grows a new lie every 5 minutes. Vexera crosses out 3 with a flourish. Rivena counts heads. Karthos counts exits. Ceres draws a spine on a map and writes civic grid across it like a dare. A runner eats R on the last steps and shoves a note into Deku's hand. The wax is rich. The font screams lawyer. Emergency session. Deku reads. Ul declares martial risk. Motion. Suspend the accord for public safety. Rivena cracks her neck. We're not letting that gavel land. Ceres flips her plan to the second page. Good. I've been looking for an excuse to wire the hull. Vexera taps the corner of T. He note where a faint triangle of 3 dots hides. Marvane's stamp under the polish. He's moving a private guard through the postern at noon. He thinks we'll be busy liking ourselves. Karthos hooks his shield. We can like ourselves and still be on time. Deku nods. Split it. Rivana, floor control. Karthos, block the postern. Saris, plug the hull into the grid. Vexera, find Marvane's escape route, steal the brakes. I'll take the lectern if I have to. I'd rather take the wall. You take the wall, Rivana says. I'll handle the knives. They move. The conclave hull hums with Peo. PLE who pretend they don't enjoy the smell of panic. Ull raises her gavel with the air of someone about to put out a fire by ordering the room to admire the flames. Emergency session, she intones. By my authority, by trial of deed, Rivana says, voice clean. She doesn't shout, she doesn't bow, she stands on the floor like a blade set down where it belongs. Open the articles. That is not, Ull begins. Ancient right, the captain says from the aisle, not looking at Ull at all. He taps the rule plate with his baton. Stands in emergencies. The guards part, not because she told them. Because their bodies remember yesterday and don't want to be stupid today. Saris slides a copper plate under the dais and slaps a braided lead onto the wall sigils with all the ceremony of plugging in a kettle. Scribes, don't move, she says. You're about to be very loud on purpose. Ull sights down her nose. Engineer, remove. A scribe yelps. It's humming. That's your civic spine, Saris says. Already at the next junction. You write truth, the street hears. You lie, the street hears louder. The gallery leans forward like a single animal that loves gossip and audits in equal measure. Deku doesn't take the lectern. He walks to the notice wall and slaps up a fresh board. Reform motions. Public tally. Here's the agenda, he says. 1. Make the accord law. 2. Put foundry. Conversions under an elected board with open books. 3. Post the restitution names on the hall door until they pay. 4. A censure on Ull for using other people's fear like a tool. Gasps. Laughter. Outrage. Relief. It's music but uglier and better than a choir. Ull hammers her gavel so hard the handle splits. You do not dictate our calendar. We're not dictating, Rivana says. We're voting. Karthos doesn't kick in the postern. He opens it and steps through like he lives here. Marvane's paid boys don't get a cool entrance. They get a soldier with forearms like duty and a voice th. It says he's not switching to killing today. Safe your blades, he tells them. You push into that hall, you run into people who will remember your faces when you need a light at a bad corner. Orders are orders, their lieutenant says. Bracing like a man who learned to fight in clean rooms. Karthos steps closer, close enough for the man to smell street dust. So is decency. The lieutenant's eyes shift. He looks past Karthos, toward the noise of a city that didn't die when the sky tried. He lowers his chin a fraction. We hold here, he says to his men. Helmets off. If asked, we're witnesses. Good choice, Karthos says. And means it. Inside, Saris flips her last plate. The grid hums. A child out on the steps says the promise you teach when you want to leave a place better than you found it. I'll keep lights on and routes clear, she whispers, not knowing anyone hears. The hall hears. It's in the speakers now, under the marble, above the banner, threaded through the air like a reminder. Ull's fury splinters under its own weight. Order. Deku points at the board. Motion 1. Accord into law. Hands. Hands rise. Scribes count out loud. The captain counts too, voice steady over the math. The gallery shouts numbers with them and suddenly everyone is on the same sheet of music without a conductor. Motion carries, the scribe says, breathless. By a margin of, big. Precise, Saris mutters, smiling despite herself. Motion 2, Deku says. Conversion board, elected. Seconded, a lord says, tired and human in the face. Motion 3, Rivana says, pping the posted names with her scabbard. Restitution accountability. Seconded, the captain says, loud enough to choke irony. Ull tries one more trick. Security alert, she says. Hull under threat. Session suspended. From whom? Vexera asks. She walks down the aisle with a ledger in one hand and two of Marvain's clerks in the other, both very interested in their shoes. She tosses the ledger to a scribe. From the man who tried to sell 6 blocks to acquire and mislabeled it, Urban Renewal. We stole his receipts. You like receipts. She kicks the postern door open the rest of the way. Carthos nods to the clerks like he'll show them where the water pump is later. Marvain, late, sweating, offended, arrives at the foot of the aisle with a small personal army whose helmets are now under their arms. Lady Ule, he begins, wiping his lip. This Gaul. You were recognized, Ule says, desperate for a friend. No, Deku says. He's recorded. He points to the wall. Saris holds up a sign. Public comment. 2 minutes. The gallery cackles. Ule swallows anger like a pebble. Marvain launches a speech anyway. It has long words and care for the commoner and a sad story about theft solved by order. It takes 20 seconds before the civic spine makes it sound like a cheap flute. You're done, Rivena says. Sit. He doesn't. Guards look at his sword, look at Carthos, look at Th. Kid drawing another chalk line on the rumor board outside. Marvain sits. Motion 4, Deku says. Censure. Scribes write the word like it's a relief. Scribes also write another word beside it. Election. Because someone in the gallery shouts it and the wall agrees. Ule looks ill. She signs the votes because you sign when you've been beaten honestly. Effective immediately, the scribe says, voice shaky, the Crimson Accord is law. The conversion board stands. Restitution postings continue. Censure adopted. People don't cheer. They exhale. That's better. Cheering burns calories you need for work. Outside, the rumor board gets a fresh column. Laws passed today, and a kid writes the 4 points with a tongue stuck between his teeth like he's learning to draw straight. Rivena rolls her shoulders. Political knife sheathed, she says. Now the real one. Vexera tosses Deku a folded map, pin-thin, shimmering. Sky path, she says. Seraphiel mislaid a manual, like promised. The L. Addis has holes if you crawl where vanity never imagines kneecaps. Carthos checks his hooks. You want a rope to heaven again. I want a corridor, Deku says. You keep the ground from panicking. I'll keep the sky from being stupid. Saris holds up a coil clasp. Go break their bad lever. We'll hold the load. Nixara steps beside her, coat tight, eyes level. I'll carry what I can. If you say stop, Saris begins. You listen, Nixara finishes. You do. Good habit, Rivena says. They split. Rivena takes a squad of guards who don't want to be heroes and makes them useful instead. Carthos takes the roofs. Saris takes the spine and 4 crews who call each other by names now, not numbers. Vexera goes sideways and up. Deku goes up and up. The choir spire is all neat light and petty math. The lattice hums with numbers that pretend to be mercy. Deku lands on a rib and counts breath, beats, cameras. Vexera slides out of a vent with dust on her nose and a grin designed for crimes. You do the honest part. She whispers. I'll do the rude part. I thought those were the same in your head. They are, she says, and slips away. Seraphiel meets Deku on the catwalk. Where the lattice turns a city into lines. No helm. No choir. Just a man with stubborn carved into his cheekbones the way some people get freckles. They know, he says. Above me. They intend to fire a grid burn if we hesitate. What is a grid burn? Deku asks. Erasure, Seraphiel says. Clean. Wrong. Then help me make it stupid. They move together. 2 guards step out, blades up, voices flat. Deku disarms the first with a shoulder he didn't warn about. Seraphiel sweeps the second's ankle. Not elegant, perfect. Inside, Seraphiel says. We have minutes. The spire's eye looks D. Own at pandemonium through glass that hates dust. Models march across it. Evacuation efficiency, descent tolerances, heat maps of where people dare to be brave. Seraphiel's fingers twitch like he want. To fix that metric and the one over there and the way this one pretends it's the same as caring. Teach me, Deku says. Seraphiel meets his eyes and, for the first time, doesn't try to translate people into a chart before he answers. They will watch everything, he says. But they only trust numbers they make. We must force them to count something they can't ignore. Promises, Deku says. Promises, Seraphiel echoes, surprised to hear himself like that. Deku keys the calm. Ceres. Time to be noisy. Ceres laughs, breathless. I was born noisy. She slams an anchor into the steps of the hull. Carthos posts a watch to hold the line. Rivena steals a moment to pick a splinter from a kid's hand and send him to right. Water arrives at 4 on the corner board. Nyxara closes her eyes and starts a slow pulse through the grid you feel in your sternum before you hear it. Citizens of Pandemonium, Ceres says into a box Vexera stole from a priest. Say it with me, I'll keep lights on and routes clear. I'll hold, I'll shield, I'll keep my neighbor breathing. I build, I mend, I carry my block. They say it, a street at a time at first. A market, a school, a drinking line, a rooftop, a stuck elevator, a clinic built last night out of doors and stubbornness. The engine hum stacks. The spire audibly hears it. Seraphiel's eyes widen. It's anchoring to the spoken intervals, he murmurs. And the awe in his voice isn't for tech. These are prayers that didn't ask permission. Don't call them prayers, Ceres says in his ear. They're instructions to ourselves. He almost smiles. Better. The alarm changes pitch. Upstairs, a higher hand reaches for an override. Not today, Seraphiel says. He slaps a lock and the lattice grinds, unsure. Vexera's voice slips in from a vent overhead. I have their kill switch in my mouth. If I bite, it dies. If it dies, 6 districts go dark while we reroute. Option. Don't bite, Deku says. Spit it in my hand. A soft drop. A glass tooth lands in his palm. It hums. It's ugly. He wants to break it. He doesn't. He pockets it. Evidence, he says. Precise. Vexera purrs. I'm learning. A cold, clean light floods the chamber. The Archon manifests the way Allah walks into a room. Confident, bored with your pain, sure of his own breath. His face is kind if you don't look at the math in his eyes. Anomaly, he says to Deku. Defector, to Seraphiel. He doesn't glare. He erases with tone. Deku doesn't bow. You're about to burn a city that learned how to keep itself alive without your hand on its throat. Don't. The Archon studies him like a mechanic looks at the wrong bolt. Your grip is strong. Your method will fail when sentiment expires. Truth, Deku says. Sentiment fades. Habits don't. We're building those. Habits are brittle, the Archon says. Then fix them, Deku shoots back. With us. The Archon flicks a finger. The window shows the grid with red lines drawn through it, angles meant to hurt less and still hurt. The override icon ticks. He's not here to talk. He's here to check a box that says acceptable loss. Don't, Seraphiel says, and steps between the lever and the hand that thinks touching it is good work. Recalibration recommended. Denied, the Archon says without looking at him. Execute. Rivena would have cut him. Vexera would have tricked him. Ceres would have broken his toy. Deku does none of those. He reaches past the Archon and grabs the handle with both hands like you grab a stubborn door that stuck because nobody oiled it, not because a god said so. Look down, he says. The Archon doesn't. The lattice does. It displays the promises stacking in real time. 3 words here, 6 there, a whole block shouting a sentence in the wrong meter and mean. Ing it so hard the machine decides meter is fake. The red lines judder. The override stutters. The numbers do what they never do for men like him. They refuse to lie for him. This is a pilot, Seraphiel says, calm as winter. Let it run. Quote. The Archon's face doesn't crack. His certainty does, a line down the center no anthem can patch. You presume. Deku keeps his hands on the lever and his words short. We're fixing your mess. Help or move. He doesn't add a threat. He doesn't pose. He doesn't give a speech. He stands there with his hands on a thing that kills badly and refuses to let it do that. The override light goes dark. The Archon watches the city hold and hates that word in a way that might one day teach him to like it. Or not. Today isn't for his growth. Withdraw, he says, disgusted and neat. Seraphiel lowers his head a fraction. Not deference. Relief disguised as manners. Acknowledged. The Archon fades from the room like a rule someone finally crossed out. Vexa. HRA drops from the vent onto the catwalk and dangles upside down to peer into the lever housing. We done breaking heaven, or is there a second course? Always a second course, Deku says. But we serve soup first. God. You're hot when you say things like that, she mutters, and flips onto her feet. Seraphiel's mouth twitches. You worry me. Join the club, Rivana says in his ear from the ground. Because she borrowed a comm and refuses to apologize for eavesdropping. Status. Sky stands down, Deku says. How's the hall? Boring, Rivana says, satisfied. They're writing bylaws. I'm using their quills to stab a sandwich. Bring me one, Saris says. No mustard. The mustard is a lie. Karthos grunts. Postern held. Marvane sulking. His men are asking where to sign up for block watch. I told them to bring their own broom. Nixara breathes out. I'm stopping, she says, voice small and proud. Before the hum makes my teeth ache. Stop, Saris says immediately. Good choice. Wheel bridge. Deku looks at Seraphiel. You coming down? Not yet, Seraphiel says. I will misplace more manuals first. Good, Deku says. Try not to get fired. Fired is imprecise, Seraphiel says. But noted. They don't shake. They look at each other like men who shared weight in a bad room and will remember it when the world pretends they didn't. Deku and Vexera take the vent. It's cramped, hot, and perfect. Vexera steals a panel screw with her teeth and pockets it like a trophy. That went better than my childhood, she says. Low bar, he says. She bumps his shoulder. Higher now. They hit the steps into a city that looks like itself again. Not clean, not safe, alive. The rumor board reads Sunlance, diverted and ool, censured and water at 4 an engine crew hot. With yes written in 5 hands. Rivana is on the hall rail eating a sandwich like it wronged her and waving a crust at a junior scribe to fix a comma. She sees Deku, rolls her eyes, and holds out half the sandwich. Bite, she orders. He does. You wrote bylaws. I bullied bylaws, she says. Saris wrote them. I drew boxes, Saris says from the steps where she's sitting on AC. Oil case with her legs shaking in little aftershocks. There's grease on her cheek and pride under her ribcage. Numbers go here, oversight goes there, audits on this wall, complaints on that one. And a clause that says nobody gets to build new machines in secret. Especially me, Vexera says, hand up. Especially you, Saris says, dry. You get a lab schedule like everyone else. Vexera PR. S's a palm to Deku's chestplate and leaves a dusty handprint like a badge. You didn't kill a god, she says. You stalled a rich man. That's my kink. Rivana snorts. Get in line. Nixara walks up slow, cheeks flushed. Hands steady now that she stopped. People part without looking like they're doing her a favor. She looks at Deku. He nods. She nods back. No halo. No choir. A person. You said stop, he says. I did, she says. You listened. Keep doing that, Saris says to both of them, firm and kind. Karthos posts the first official block watch roster on the hall wall. It's a table, not a trumpet. Names, hours, contact pots. He underlines a row with his thumb. We feed first shift before we feed the council, he says to nobody in particular. Write it, Deku says. Make it a rule. A grandmother with a ledger under her arm taps the notice board with 2 fingers. Who cleans this? She asks. You, Rivana says. And your nephew. Rotate. We'll post it. The grandmother nods like someone just asked her to lift a weight she knows she can. A teen from the rumor board tugs Deku's gauntlet. Can I do a thing? You just did, Deku says. Do another. Post when the clinic lines open. People hate lines more when they don't know why they're waiting. The kid salutes with a chalk nub and sprints like the city hired him. Seraphiel's voice ghosts the edge of the sky. Not a threat, not a hymn, a note in the margins. Manuals misplaced, he says. If anyone asks, you stole them. We steal with receipts, Vexera says to the air. Of course you do, Seraphiel says, and the air moves like an eye roll. Which shouldn't be possible and is. Marvane tries to slink by. The crowd doesn't grab him. It reads the posted ledger with his name on it and steps aside just n. Out to make him uncomfortable every 6 feet. That's its own kind of sentence. Wool signs a resignation with a hand that doesn't tremble now that it's not holding a gavel wrong-sized for it. A scribe puts the paper up on the wall because that's what the wall is for now, things you don't hide. Rivana leans her shoulder into Deku's. You going to make a speech? No, he says. I'm going to make a schedule. Infuriating, she says. Fond. Saris flips a page on her clipboard. Foundry 5 tomorrow. And clinics. And sewer lines. And a study on how long promises hold before they need a snack. Snacks every 6 hours. Vexera says, serious for once. And flirting between tasks. It keeps morale rude. Approved. Rivana says. Karthos grunts, amused. And drills. Quiet ones. People W. Ho don't like drills, like living through them. Write it. Deku says again, pointing to the board. If it's not on a wall, it's a rumor. They post. They eat bad soup that tastes like Victory Bako. Say it's hot and free and nobody took a tithe at the ladle. They check their watches and their neighbors. They get yelled at by old women for tracking mud on the hall floor and say sorry and mop it. They teach. They learn. They stay. Later, when the maps are rolled and the kids are asleep under banners that used to sell beer, Deku sits on the arena rim with his feet dangling into a hole that became a workshop. Rivana drops beside him and steals the last bite of his sandwich. Saris leans back to back with him and draws a coil diagram on his knee with a finger because she can't stop and won't apologize. Vexera lies on the stone with her hair a mess and a grin that says she chose the right gang. You did it, Vexera says, like she's testing how the words feel in this air. We did part of it, Deku says. Tomorrow is ugly again. Rivana bumps him. Good. I like ugly that ends in soup. Saris hums. Also audits. Also audits, he agrees. Nixara walks past with a cup of tea and a blanket she puts over a kid who fell asleep on a pile of sandbags on purpose because he likes the feel. Karthos does a last roof walk and doesn't find anyone alone who doesn't want to be. The rumor board gets a new scribble in bright chalk. Welcome to pandemonium, mind the pun. Someone groans. Someone else laughs like he didn't know his chest could. Deku exhales and lets the coil hum settle where the bruises used to sing. No prayer. No promise he can't keep. Just a line he draws and a room he stands in until other people decide the line is worth it. We aren't a throne, he says, mostly to the stone. Partly to the people who keep him honest. We're a door. Rivana taps her blade to the floor once, a little ceremony they invented by accident. Hold it open, she says. Always, he says. He gets up because sitting starts to feel like a speech and he doesn't like those. He checks the watches. He fixes a squeal in a hinge that hasn't stopped complaining since the first pit fell. He signs a purchase order for nails and soup. He draws 3 boxes on the wall for tomorrow's jobs and writes names under them, leaving space for people to add their own. The city doesn't go quiet. It goes steady. That's better. Chapter 7 End.